Yo. How we doing, chat? Yo. How we all doing?
Gigi, I've decided not to leave this town. Maybe I can stay and find some other nice people who will like me and accept me for who I am.
The cry.
Trusting your spirit, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
What's up? All right, let's just get right into it. Don't need to waste any more time. All right, Get this shit out of here. Shush. Be quiet. We got theories to react to. All right. So let's just get right into it. We got Hyperjoy. We have a lot of like special theories to react to tonight. So let's just not waste any more time and let's get right into it. I'm going to start with Hyperjoy.
Crying child, Charlie, and Elizabeth. The crying child, Charlie, and Elizabeth. Who dies first?
The crying child. I'm just kidding. It's a Charlie.
Is one of FNAF's biggest mysteries, and is the main reason it's unanimously agreed that the beginning of the timeline is the most difficult part of the lore to solve.
Is it though?
I present what I think.
Well, that's true, which is why we have these latest games coming out that are going to go earlier in the timeline to explain the beginning.
The concrete answer to this
and then I
with
guess
details you may have missed that also help solve the motivations behind William Afton. So subscribe so we can hit 250,000 subscribers before the end.
Didn't the novels already give us his motives?
The month, aka my birthday. Like the video, comment your thoughts below at the end, and let's begin solving FNAF's biggest debate. Of course, remember though that this is all just a theory, and it's one that actually goes against what the majority of the community believes. So even if you disagree, just hear me out, as I might be able to convince you by the end of it. Before we begin, what is actually confirmed about these three victims? Starting back with FNAF 2, and we learn about Charlie, the child who goes on to possess the puppet, where we see that she's outside of an unspecified location and is approached by a purple car, before William Afton steps out and kills her, leaving her for dead. This same event is then reiterated in FNAF 6, but slightly different, where we see that the security puppet, an animatronic built to keep kids inside the location, and here specifically focused on Charlie, is trapped by some kids inside of its box. And so when Charlie is stuck outside of the location, it can't help her. Eventually, the security puppet frees itself and heads outside, only to eventually find Charlie's corpse on the ground with tire marks fleeing the scene, breaking down next to her and leading Charlie's soul to inhabit the machine. Then finally, in Help Wanted 2, we get confirmation that Charlie died sometime in 1983 by inputting the date into a keypad to receive the puppet memory.
Is the bitrate low or is that just the street? Yeah.
On to FNAF 4, and we then meet the crying child, the youngest son of William Aftons, who gets bullied by his older brother Mike.
There we go.
To the point that he's eventually put into by Mike and his friends. His head eventually being crushed by Fredbear's bite. He's later sent to the hospital and dies, as heard by a flatline playing in the background as he fades away into the void. We know for a fact that this all takes place sometime in 1983 as well, due to the TV playing Fredbear and Friends, having that exact copyright.
Bruh, what's up with the camera?
Finally, we get the sister location where we learn about Elizabeth, the daughter of William Afton, who constantly wants to go see Circus Baby despite her father's wishes.
There we go.
One day disobeying him only to be captured by Baby, and eventually dying inside the machine. This event having no later elaboration nor confirmed date, which makes things difficult when creating a timeline, as that means she could also die sometime in 1983. So with that,
no, it just mean never mind.
Craft a proper timeline with these three deaths.
Being a teen in New York City is different.
Bro, I have an ad blocker. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. I have an ad blocker.
Well,
fuck off.
For us, there is actually more information, including a few things you might have never heard before that even made me change my own mind about this order mid-writing. The biggest piece of information that we need to talk about before anything else occurs in FNAF 6, where Henry, Charlie's father, talks about everything that's happened over these past few decades, and says something quite interesting. Quote,
I could make myself
sleep,
but not yet. Not
small dark note on that. There's two things. He could either be being literal when he says sleep, and that he literally can't sleep at night because of like this stuff, or he is planning to cut the cord, if you will.
Not until I undo what he has done and heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
This quote immediately rings alarm bells in my mind. Scott doesn't confirm things easily and often avoids doing so, especially when it comes to the
Bro, he does everything in his power to avoid doing it. What do you mean?
timeline.
What do you mean,
Our
bro?
main characters explicitly tells us this happens first in the finale of the story. Well, finale when it released. It seems like Scott is trying to give us an answer to the first major event in the timeline. People often focus on the "a wound first inflicted on me" part of it, but the rest of the quote is equally as important. The start of the sentence tells us that he's talking about William's evil overall, and not just specifically murders. then saying said evil was first inflicted onto him with Charlie's death, and then saying that her death is what actually caused the rest of the story, all of this, to occur. I personally believe this directly tells us that Charlie's death was first, being the domino that fell to cause the rest of the story to unfold. Although, is there anything else that actually backs up Charlie dying first in the timeline?
The novels.
Yes, a lot, actually. Before we get into what his motives
She dies first in the novels. So why not, like, what? And also she dies at Fredbear's, so why can't that transfer too?
would be for killing Charlie first, something I believe a lot of people have forgotten about comes from FNAF 4. Within this game, the crying child meets this girl with pigtails, who explains how there's rumors that the animatronics are actually possessed, moving around on their own at night. While this does seem like just a joke or reference to the other games, it shouldn't be forgotten what Scott himself said about FNAF 4. Quote, "I guess most people assume that I filled the game with random Easter eggs this time. I did," which causes me to believe that this is actually meant to be an intentional hint that an animatronic is indeed already possessed at this point in the story, which, since Elizabeth didn't exist yet, only leaves Charlie's possession of the puppet. Not only that, but there's a hidden detail in the
Well, okay, so with this, here's how essentially it goes in the novels. So it goes, Charlie possesses the puppet. William takes note of this and is like, so clearly these are linked, something must have happened. So he figured out that like possession occurred, but he didn't know how. So that's where the experiments come in. And he also notices, the plush with his kid and the crying and all that. So he notices that. So he needs to confirm whether it's the hypothesis, whether that's the link or not. So he makes the fun times to kidnap children. And then, Elizabeth, turns out Elizabeth is the test subject here inadvertently. She gets kidnapped by Baby, she dies, and then possesses Circus Baby. William realizes, boom, when you die inside the robots, you possess them, so he does the MCI. Bingo.
security puppet minigame which some aren't actually aware of. And that's the fact that the music track behind the minigame is called Alchemist's Fantasy. In various ages and cultures, alchemists sought out the elixir of life that supposedly grants eternal life, immortality, and miraculously cures diseases. So
it's exactly what William wants.
Alchemist's Fantasy appears to be hinting that her death and then possession of the puppet is actually the reason William first learns of and seeks out the supernatural, leading to him eventually creating the fun times and the experiments underground to research it. Also, it's commonly assumed that after the crying child dies in the mouth of Fredbear with various witnesses, Fredbear's family diner closes down, and the company blames it on Springlock failures, despite that obviously not being the reason, similar to how William blames Circus Babies being cancelled on gas leaks to cover up Elizabeth's death.
Bro's a coverer.
That Charlie actually dies at the open and operational Fredbear's family diner, as explicitly told to us within the original novel trilogy, and hinted at through the games themselves, meaning she'd have to die before his bite causes the location to close.
Yep.
This would also make sense with the fact that in FNAF 2, Phone Guy states,
we're gonna try to contact the original restaurant.
Holy moly, that mic quality is horrible. I get that it's a phone, but like, bro. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna just go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back. No worries, chat. No worries, no worries, no worries, no worries. All right, we're back. We are back.
owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that.
Implying there's only one owner of Fredbear's by the end of its run, which can actually be explained away with Henry likely leaving the company after his daughter dies there, while the crying child's death then leads it to be closed for good, which again would be similar to how William also closed the circus babies after his child dies there too.
Really?
Not only that, but the puppet is specifically missing from those minigames, despite both Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and Fredbear's Family Diner being open at the same time when the minigames take place, which could be hinting towards the fact that after Charlie's death and the puppet's malfunction, they decided to put the puppet out of service for now, it only returning when the 1987 location opens up. But going back to the novel trilogy I just mentioned though, and while those 3 books do...
Is that Shadow Libra in the chat?
...also give us information on the story of the game.
In the
and
YouTube
especially
chat?
the characters, including our main villain, William Afton. As I just mentioned, within the novel trilogy, we learn that while Fredbear...
How you doing, Libra?
...open, William kidnaps and murders Charlie first. But why? What are William's motives behind
Jealousy of Henry. Please, Hyperdroid, please mention the journals found in his house. Please, 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 please.
killing her? Well, in the Silver Eyes, we read that while police are searching...
Yes, yes, let's go, dude. This guy, he's so base.
Passages about Henry that range
Yes.
from wild jealousy to mere worship, hinting that William actually killed Charlie due to his insane jealousy.
Pure jealousy.
In order to basically ruin him and to break who William seemingly thought of as a perfect man.
Bro, what? I don't give a fuck. I have an ad blocker. Why is this not, like,
This in itself, along
ruining
with
the stream, bro?
shows us that William doesn't actually need to have a child of his own die in order to have the motive or
No,
to
he
be
does
pushed
not.
over the edge to kill Charlie. Instead, showing us that jealousy alone
Ooh, you got a
would
new
make him
script?
murder Charlie, and here explicitly kill her first in the story, with a trilogy continuing to show that Elizabeth is killed after Charlie too. It's important to keep in mind that FNAF 4 and the Silver Eyes were being written at the same time.
Thank you for pointing this out. Oh my god, I love this guy. Dude, bro, Hyperdroid's like my theorist brother, bruh.
Only a couple months after FNAF 4's release, and so it would be quite confusing for William's motivations for his first kill to be because of his kid in any effect.
Exactly.
At the same time, release a book directly telling us that it has nothing to do with his children.
Yes.
People believe the crying child dies first, mainly due to the fact that it gives William a motive to kill Charlie out of jealousy.
And then here's the problem with that. He doesn't need a motive. He's a psychopathic serial killer with no empathy. Like people are looking for a motive that's also morally acceptable. That's not that's not gonna be. Yeah, no.
But as I just explained, we have the source directly telling us that William already has that jealousy towards
Exactly.
his motive for killing Charlie before anyone else even dies. Finally, a relatively smaller piece of evidence is this image from Stillwell Studios.
Oh my god. I mentioned this during the podcast stream. This is the image I'm talking about. Look at this.
That was in Help Wanted 2, showing the 4 Freddy's characters at a full fest as well as the puppet in the background.
Boom.
Now, the only full
The
fest
puppet
that we actually
scarecrow.
know of are the 70s Full Fest that we get a poster of in Help Wanted 2, as well as Full Fest 83 that we see in Curse of Dreadbear. And considering these are Freddy's characters, and we know that the Freddy's location opened up in 1983, I think it's safe to say that this is meant to be showing us the Full Fest of 83. But why does this matter? Well, because the puppet is actually dead in the background.
Yes, sir.
As a scarecrow specifically, which implies that by the time the Full Fest
Let's
83 is
go.
happening, Charlie is already dead.
Oh,
And
she's
I think
long
this is
dead, my
actually
friend.
important because that very Full Fest is everywhere in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC, which happens to heavily connect it to FNAF 4 and the Crying Child, with the Afton House on the Hill, Dreadbear being the Frankenstein version of Fredbear.
Exactly. And people miss that too. Like Dreadbear is literally just an undead Fredbear.
Representing William, and Grim Foxy representing Michael, etc., etc. I believe that this is showing us that the Crying Child's death occurs while the Full Fest of 83 is still happening.
Oh my god, this is
If
beautiful.
Charlie
This is
dead, I would
beautiful.
say it could be any Full Fest in any
This
year.
is beautiful. Can we make Hyperdroid the mascot for Theory Tubers, please?
Exclusively only
Please.
two, and both would imply that Charlie dies before the Crying Child. Before we figure out who dies next, a common reason for people believing the Crying Child dies before Charlie is that a lot of people seem to think that the bite of 83 is what causes Henry to make the security puppet. So here's
What? Do people actually believe that? Why would he make... What? What? Why would he make an animatronic in response to an animatronic related death? It doesn't
child doesn't also die, and therefore
doesn't really line up to me.
after the crying child. However, this can actually be disproven. Not only can a security system be put in place without a prior event causing it, but the whole purpose of the security puppet is that it's actually stopping kids, and mainly Charlie, from leaving the location and actually keeping them inside with the animatronics.
Thank you. Holy. Oh my god, I love this guy so much. Dude, I'm gonna take a walk around the room. This guy, holy Oh man, this guy is a godsend, bro. I love this guy. Man, oh my goodness. Beautiful.
Which doesn't really work with the theory that it's meant to be protecting her from them and stopping her from being bitten. If that were the case, it would be instead next to the stage itself to direct the children away, not keep them in.
Yeah, that doesn't make, yeah.
The crying child dies before Charlie is due to the fact that in the original novel trilogy, Charlie is kidnapped on Halloween, being reported the next day on November 1st. While the minigames seem to show that the crying child's death happens in the summer, although I think it's equally as important to call out that it was stated Charlie was kidnapped on Halloween in
1982. Exactly. Thank you.
Old date for Charlie's death in this video.
Thank you.
It would technically confirm that she's meant to be the first, dying a whole year before the crying child. It was changed to simply 1983 by the fourth closet. That is also showing up in Help Wanted 2. Her death date changing cannot be ignored by either side. So now we have pretty solid ground to stand on to state that Charlie dies first in the timeline, due to William's insane jealousy of Henry. So who's next? Well, luckily, I actually think this one is
a crying child
easier to solve. In fact, I think we can using only one simple piece of evidence.
The bite of 83 or that.
To the location, we're presented with this map.
Hell yeah, the breaker room map, and then
Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals, as well
and notice how you have three different locations. Easy. You have the walk to Fredbear's, plus trap hallway, FNAF 4 house. Now, these tunnels, these right here, connecting them, I think those are just the vents.
3 other connected underground locations, here titled Observations. As you probably know by this point,
the replica neighborhood and the plus trap, yep.
By William Afton, based around the crying child, evident with his path to Fredbear's family diner being recreated and the 1983 code.
And then to anyone that says William never made a replica of the neighborhood, there you go.
In order to further research the supernatural, and likely due to the agony-filled Fredbear plush, which we do actually see William now has.
Is everyone just agony plush now?
Sitting in this office, researching agony specifically. The Funtime animatronic.
He's not researching agony, he just knows about it.
Children to eventually take them to William to use for his research. Although, like I mentioned, these experiments seem to be based around the crying child's life specifically.
Exactly.
He's trying to recreate what happened to him, which inherently means that he's already dead by this point in time, meaning that he's second. This would actually add evidence for Charlie dying first when you keep his motivations in mind. Why would he recreate the crime?
Oh my god, I want every theorist to watch this video, bro.
Child's life, and from that point on be focused on experimenting with the supernatural with the fun times, experiments, and then the missing children's incident, but then randomly stop in his tracks and kill Charlie outside with nothing she could even attach herself to? Charlie's death is completely unrelated to William's motivations after the crying child's death.
It is.
It's the pattern that everything after his death is to experiment with and learn about the supernatural, which he pays the ultimate price for, with Elizabeth unfortunately being taken instead. The third death.
Let's go! Let's go! Hyperdroid is so based.
Well, think about it. William actually succeeded in his research, despite losing Elizabeth, as now he knows baby is possessed with her newly green eyes.
Thank you. I literally talked about this.
So he seemingly uses all of this research to commit the missing children's.
Yeah. Yes, yes, oh my god, this is beautiful.
Stuffing the body.
I don't even need to say shit, he's taking all the words out of my mouth.
Successfully works and causes them to all be possessed.
Yeah.
Years later, it appears he's still experimenting, killing another 5 kids to test if they'll still go on to possess the animatronics, despite him now putting their bodies outside/around the suits, instead of being stuffed inside, which works once again. We even know after this he's still experimenting, as later in the story we know he burns down the original animatronic.
Molten
to
MCI.
manipulate their
Although Molten MCI is, can you really call that an experiment?
remnant as
Kind
a
of.
substance to use to get them to possess the fun times. So it does actually seem that after the crying child dies, his suspicions on the supernatural from the puppet's possession is now confirmed. And so his pure focus from that point on is trying to learn about and experiment with the supernatural, requiring the crying child to die before Elizabeth, and accidentally giving more evidence to Charlie dying before the crying child.
Hell
to keep
yeah.
William's motives consistent from his death forward.
Give me 30 seconds so I can show you.
If I get one more ad, one more YouTube, one more, one more, one more, one more. Watch what happens. I have an ad blocker. Why is it not working?
Now is that back in FNAF 4 we see an empty girl's room in the Afton house. So doesn't this prove that Elizabeth dies before him? Well, not only did
It's
Elizabeth
ruining the
as a
quality of the
character
stream.
even exist at that point in time, considering FNAF 4 was the final game in the series originally, but I actually think that it's likely that this is instead meant to be Mrs. Afton's room, telling us that she has now been fully pushed out of the family and or is dead at this point in the story, explaining where the mother is while the crying child is just roaming around the streets on his own. Although there are other explanations some use if it's Elizabeth's room, mainly that she's either the pigtail girl teasing her brother, or that she's simply with a nanny or something since she's still so young. Something I also know will be mentioned is the infamous Midnight Motorist.
Yep.
What does this tell us about the Death Order? Unfortunately,
It doesn't.
not much. There are so many interpretations
It tells us that by this time, early enough in the timeline, at least one of the Afton kids is still alive.
for this minigame. It could be about the crying child being lured and running to Charlie or Elizabeth's grave. It could be about Michael being lured and
Elizabeth's grave? No, the camera. Camera froze. Why did the camera freeze? I never freeze.
running to the crying child's grave, etc., etc. There's honestly an interpretation ready for whoever you believe dies before it, so it doesn't really help us here. Another thing I know will be mentioned is what the crying child potentially saw, as some believe that he actually
Charlie's
saw a
body.
corpse, whether it was Charlie's or Elizabeth's, which of course would change the Death Order, although I heavily believe that Scott already gave us an answer for this. Quote, what is seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood.
Shadow Freddy.
Which I
Or
think
you
is
saw
hinting
him
towards the fact
hinting
that
it.
the crying child thought he saw something horrific. That
He thought he
was
saw,
probably something more instead, which
putting
is
on a
likely
suit.
in reference to this secret in FNAF 4.
Yeah.
Where we see William helping an employee get into a suit. The crying child saw this and misunderstood what was happening, assuming that the employee was actually being stuffed into the suit or eaten by the suit or something like that, and causing his fears of the animatronics. So, with all of this information in mind, my final conclusion is that William Afton kills Charlie first at Fredbear's family diner due to his raving paranoia and
Let's
insane
go,
jealousy
Hyper
towards
Droid.
Charlie possessing the puppet
Joan.
after, and William possibly noticing this. Then the crying child is bullied by Mike, him pouring his agony into his Fredbear plush, which continues up to his birthday at Fredbear's family diner, where he gets put into Fredbear's mouth and crushed, leading him to be sent to the hospital, and ends up being guided by her to likely possess Fredbear. The second death. William eventually notices the supernatural stuff going on with the puppet, and it's now confirmed with the Fredbear plush.
Now
So
it's
he then
exactly,
creates experiments on the
exactly,
ground to research the
exactly.
supernatural, and it's basically all he does from this point forward.
Yes.
The fun times to be able to capture children for said experiments.
Yep.
Although this backfires when Elizabeth is the one who is.
It also confirmed that they possess the animatronics.
Possessing Circus Baby, the third death, making the order Charlie, Crying Child, and then Elizabeth. Let me know
Bingo.
your thoughts on all of this in the comment section below, and I hope you all enjoyed this theory whether you agree or disagree. Just think on it and come to your own conclusions.
W video. W video. W. W. All right. Now let's see if he solved the retcon. This is it. The big. This is it. This is the big video. This is a big video. I'm ready to see what he thinks the retcon is. All right, let's go.
Awaken to a world of wonder.
Give me an ad. Give me an ad. Give me an ad. Give me. Nope. I'm not.
lore in the first few FNAF games was created as Scott Cawthon went along, meaning some ideas were later expanded. The lore in the first few FNAF games was created as Scott Cawthon went along, meaning some ideas were later expanded.
This is the
upon or
retcon
clarified
video,
in the
so
following game or
this is the retcon video. So aha! Look at look in the parentheses. Look at the parentheses. Look at the parentheses. It says this is a theory down here. I don't know if it's showing up on stream, but it says in parentheses this is a theory.
or even following book. But before the release of FNAF 6, he actually revealed that one thing was retconned within the story that we didn't notice. So what was it? Today I'll
Well, here's the thing. We don't know what he is referring to, but definitionally there's two retcons in the series. You have Save Him, because that's established to be a boy and then changed to be a girl. That's a retcon. And then you also have the conviction, because it says William was convicted, but we know he was not, because you aren't given 2 years for 5 accounts of child homicide. You're given life. And possibly the death penalty.
present the multiple possibilities of what this retcon could be, such as the infamous dream theory, before we settle on the answer with a piece of evidence
Dream theory was not the
that we all missed, that possibly solidifies this as confirmed by Scott himself. So subscribe so we can hit 275,000 subscribers before the end of the month. Like the video and let's finally solve the FNAF retcon. 8 years later. Quick disclaimer, while I personally think this might actually be confirmed, I'd still like to preface that this is just my opinion and is still just a theory no matter what. I have no actual say in what's true or not, even if I'm 99.9% certain in this. So without further ado,
But you
let's
just
get
said
into
you're
this
100.
theory. To put us all on the same page, back on the 4th of September 2017, user Gravity Silence posed a question in the FNAF Reddit. Do you think that Scott has had the entire lore planned out since FNAF 1, or is he just making it up as he goes along? To which Scott himself
confirmed
actually
that.
replied with a joke, stating all planned all along from the beginning of time. Never had to retcon anything. Which very quickly started a fire in the Reddit. And so the very next day, Scott made a full post titled The Retcon Issue.
The
Within
retcon.
the post he states, the truth is that I've done one actual retcon in the series, although I'm not going to say where it was. Later editing the post to include, to be fair, the one retcon mentioned was integrated pretty seamlessly, and most people didn't notice. If it had caused problems or confusion, then I would have addressed it here.
Yeah.
So what was FNAF's one retcon? Well, with that information in mind, we can actually
The conviction,
make a
bro.
serial killer checklist for whether something could be the retcon or not. 1. It has to occur before Pizzeria Simulator FNAF 6 was released, at the end of 2017, as the retcon post obviously predates the game. 2. It has to be a noticeable retcon in the story, aka evidently
Didn't he just say that it was not? Well, it has to be noticeable. You also spelled it wrong. It has to be noticeable, but also has to be like seamlessly noticeable.
changed. And 3, although it wasn't a confusion point in the community, nor affected any theories to the point that it wasn't even noticed, aka wasn't something major. And honestly, the fact that this mystery has persisted to this day does actually prove that it was seamless. So let's begin diving deep into each theory about what this retcon could be and see which ones survive the checklist, as well as giving alternative explanations for them if they're not the retcon, which actually helps clean up some lore.
I like the
stick
way
around
he's
to
going
the
about
end.
this. This is
The
what I would
biggest
do.
theory that we've all seen about it that I must discuss is dream theory.
Sorry to ruin your groove. Isn't that the worst? What if I told you?
That's a hilarious ad, YouTube. You know how funny you are for that?
Was retconned. Dream Theory, created by MatPat from Game Theory, was born from FNAF 4 and theorized that everything in FNAF was simply a dream by the crying child in a coma after the bite of 83. A lot of people believe this to be
Yeah,
true,
but there's
and
an
some
issue
still
with
do
it.
think that this was the original intention. So let's head over
Can't
to
be.
the checklist.
There's an
This
issue.
would have been changed in the very next game's sister location, aka FNAF 5. So box 1, check. It's of course a majorly noticeable change in the story, so box 2, check. Although that's actually the issue when it comes to box 3. It's way too big of a change that redirects the entire direction of the lore from the bite forward.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning we cannot check box 3 and therefore this option is eliminated. While it may have been believable at the time, with all due respect to MatPat of course, the theory simply turned out to be incorrect. The biggest point
it's just
proving
an
that, which I
incorrect
think a
theory.
lot
It
of people
happens.
forgot, is actually the fact that MatPat himself debunked the theory
He
and went against it a single week later, telling us the many problems with it and then even detailing a timeline of events to include FNAF 4 alongside inside the other games. Not only this, but Scott
He
even
debunked
replied
his
to a
own
post
theory.
soon after about how Dream Theory should jokingly die, stating, "I know, right? Who came up with this anyway?" Which was the start of his many jokes about the theory ever since, even as recently as the movie featuring a book titled Dream Theory. But then
Yeah.
what alternative explanation could I give for why the tiny toy Chica would be missing her beak? Well, MatPat wasn't actually that far off way back then, as to what some, including me, currently theorize it to mean, that it was a hint that the toy animatronics were actually based on these old toys, with this tiny toy Chica having a detachable beak, inspiring them to give the new Chica a detachable beak too, explaining why they're
I
only
don't
called
like
toy
that version of
animatronics,
Chica. She's so
despite only
creepy.
ever being called the new animatronics in universe, with Phone Guy even calling Pre-Mangle literally just Foxy. Similar to the other two hints, these weren't meant to be anything massive that solved the entire lore in one foul swoop. The hint about the misunderstanding? Simply about the crying child seeing Afton put an employee in a suit. The hint
You talked about
all
that in
four
the other
games being
video.
one story, simply to guide us away from thinking one game didn't happen or one game didn't matter. So while I do understand why some believe Dream Theory to be the retcon, it simply can't be because it was debunked soon after and changes quite literally everything we knew about the story. Not so seamless. So now we've eliminated Dream Theory, let's move on to the next biggest theory about the retcon that also comes from FNAF 4, suggesting
one?
that the contents in the FNAF 4 box was retconned. This isn't even a baseless accusation.
Wasn't that?
as
Hold
Scott
on.
himself has gone on
Hold
record
on.
to state that the contents of
Wasn't that? Yeah, didn't. That's
the
not a
box have
rec.
changed multiple
What? We don't even know what's in the
Even
box. How do we
recently stating
know?
that what was inside basically doesn't even matter anymore? Although heading
Exactly.
over to the checklist, and this one actually breaks all three rules. Think about it, the box was never actually open to us.
Exactly.
We never saw what the true contents of the box
That's
were.
what I'm saying.
And
You can't.
until Scott
It wasn't
directly told us
revealed,
they
so
were
it can't be a
changed in the Doorbell
retcon.
interview after Ultimate Custom Night released in 2018, we couldn't have ever known that to be true. No matter if it was changed once, twice, or even a billion times, we wouldn't have ever known it was changed a single time if it weren't for that interview. Scott's statement about the box comes 2 whole games after the retcon post itself, and therefore makes it an unnoticeable change.
Yep.
And not only that, but it's undeniably one of FNAF's biggest mysteries to this day, and one of the biggest confusion points that Scott has talked about multiple times, meaning all 3 rules are actually broken. Continuing on, and we have the theory that the gender of the puppet's spirit was retconned.
It factually was. Actually, no. Well, oh boy. So with this, the gender wasn't retconned. The character was like literally retconned to become the puppet. It wasn't the gender that was retconned. It was the entire character. That wasn't the puppet before. Now it was. That's a retcon.
This comes from the fact that back in
But it's
FNAF
not
2 we get a
the
secret game showing us the
retcon.
murder of the child that goes on to possess the puppet, as shown by its jump scare straight after. Although during this minigame we audibly hear the letters spelt out, S-A-V-E-H-I-M.
H.
Later in the story though, we then get more information on the same event, and the child within it in FNAF 6, where we learn that the child is actually a girl named Charlie, the daughter of Henry. This is a change. But heading to the checklist, and this immediately breaks the first rule. We didn't know that the puppet's possessor was now a girl at all, at the time, since the retcon post predates FNAF 6's release.
Yep.
While Charlie did exist in the novel trilogy, there was absolutely nothing connecting her character to the death of the puppet's possessor at the time, mainly due to that very fact that it was Save Him, which would have debunked that theory at the time, making this change unnoticeable at the time too. Finally, it's also not seamless. We all immediately picked up on the fact that it was changed in FNAF 6.
Oh,
so
yeah.
what is it if it's not the retcon? Well, while
Williams
it could just be a
conviction.
retcon, like fellow FNAF theorist ID's fantasy
Williams
suggests, the heat could actually be referring to
conviction.
the puppet animatronic itself. Since not only are we
He's
playing
gonna
this
say
minigame
it.
after the
He's
child
gonna
is
say
already
William.
dead,
It's gonna be
therefore we
Williams
literally cannot
conviction.
save the child, but later games like Ultimate Custom Night continue to use he for the puppet, despite us knowing that it's possessed by Charlie by that point. So this theory also doesn't survive the checklist and is eliminated. Similar to that theory though is another one coming from good old MatPat, stating that the crying child possessing the puppet was retconned. This
That was never a thing. So that's just not a retcon.
theory comes from that very same Save Him statement that we just discussed, connecting the 2 children due to their constantly crying nature and his striped shirt matching the puppet's striped arms. Although mid-development on FNAF 4, Scott changed it to make it so the crying child was a separate new character, with nothing to do with the other kid. While I can see where he's coming from, and it isn't even a bad theory about the original intention of the crying child, and it might actually hold true, when we actually head to the checklist, it does succeed rule 1, but then unfortunately fails rules 2 and 3. This change would have been made during development, and so before the game even released to us. Therefore, we couldn't have possibly noticed that it was retconned at all. only Scott would know. Not only that, but if it were true, it would be quite a big change, splitting one of the most important characters in the plot into two entirely different characters. So while I
That's
can't
crazy.
even debunk that it may have actually been Scott's intention while creating FNAF 4, I can safely say that it isn't the retcon itself, and is eliminated from the list of possibilities.
Here
The
we
next
are.
possibility is that the original owner of Fredbear's Family Diner was retconned.
What?
If you're confused, in FNAF 2, as you know, we get calls from the phone guy, which within one of these calls, he states,
We're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner.
Henry.
I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that.
It's
which
Henry.
implies that there's only one owner of Fredbear's
There's
Family
actually
Diner,
two.
despite us later knowing that Henry was actually the co-owner of the location in the first FNAF book, The Silver Eyes. Heading to the checklist, and on the surface it seems to actually pass the first two. Although not only is the third rule broken, as it changes the entire backstory of the restaurant and company, but when you realize that we didn't actually know if Henry was even in the game lore or not by the time the retcon post was made, it ends up breaking rule 1 and 2 as well. We
That's
didn't
true.
know Henry carried over into the game timeline
That's
until
true.
FNAF 6 released with the audio log HRY223, commonly believed to stand for Henry 2023. But wait, we do know that this was changed though, so how isn't it a second retcon? Well, the first and most likely reason is actually due to the fact that the phone guy says it. Right before he says that line, we can hear that he's stumbling over his words with stress about the incident, and literally almost forgets the name of the location itself. Questioning
true.
whether it was even right, so it can very easily be written off as phone guy simply making a mistake. Not only that, but right after that statement he says,
They're closed for years, so I won't be able to track anybody down.
which anybody does inherently imply multiple people. Although if you're not satisfied with this answer, another way to make sense of this quote is that within that same call we hear that the phone guy has learned about what's going on, and even mentions the concerns about
This
previous
happens
employees.
the
So
day
it's
of the
highly likely that they
DCI.
figured out that the previous employee in the location was actually William Afton under the disguise, and so the original owner they're trying to track down is actually Henry after all. Theories aside, and no matter what the alternative explanation for that line is, it cannot be the retcon that Scott was talking about, since it breaks all three
It breaks every rule.
Speaking
Life as a New York
I don't care. I have an ad block. Why is it not working?
phone guy, and the next contender is that the animatronics existing for 20 years was retconned. Again,
How has William's conviction not been mentioned yet? Is that where he's gonna go?
if you're confused,
Is that the one
even
you picked?
earlier in FNAF 1, phone guy says this interesting line.
If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably be a bit irritable at night too.
Which wouldn't make too much sense when considering
It
that
could be
by
being
that time the retcon
hyperbolic.
post was made, the earliest date in the timeline that we knew of was 1983. This does seem to fit our checklist at first glance, although there's actually a few problems with this being the retcon. The biggest problem comes from listening to the full quote, specifically the delivery of it.
The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night, but do I blame them? No. If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably be a bit irritable at night too.
While people focus on the 20 years detail specifically, the entire context around that quote and the cadence of his voice delivery heavily implies that it's meant to be a joke, and
Yeah.
simply over-exaggerating for the sake of over-exaggerating.
Exactly.
Really just meaning that they haven't been cleaned for a while.
That's
The
what I'm- that's-
animatronics don't
thank you.
actually get quirky, and they don't actually get given baths.
Thank
I
you.
always
Oh,
took this
yeah.
as a joke. Just like the previous theory, it comes down to the phone guy
That's actually a good point. You know, he jokes about the bath. You take those metaphorically, but the 20 years you take literally. That's interesting.
actually meaning every single thing that he says, and everything being undoubtedly truthful with no room for error, which
Yep.
doesn't really work with a character as stumbly and as jokeful as the phone guy, who makes multiple jokes and mistakes in these same calls, as I'll show on screen right now just in case you don't believe me. Although even though I do heavily, extremely believe that it was simply the phone guy over-exaggerating, and it wasn't meant to be a serious detail, let's play devil's advocate and say that
Yes.
it was meant to be taken seriously, and that the animatronics really did exist 20 years ago within the isolated story of FNAF 1. Was it retconned in the future games? Well, that's the thing, still
It
no.
wasn't.
We know due to FNAF 2 that they started to retrofit the originals that eventually become the FNAF 1 animatronics, with the new technology. But Phone Guy actually tells us that they were just so ugly, and specifically that they smelled.
They didn't
So the
really
company
smell
ran another
because
route
there's
leading to
bodies
Droid,
inside.
directly telling us that they still smelled from the original location, and they weren't even cleaned during this process, which is directly referencing this very quote that we're talking about now, about them still smelling. So with that in mind, as well as the fact that we don't actually know for certain when FNAF 1 takes place, nor when the animatronics were first created, there was no way of us actually knowing in 2017 that this statement isn't true, therefore breaking Rule 2. All in all, the quote seemed to be Phone Guy exaggerating and simply joking, although even if you want to take it as a serious piece of information, it wasn't a noticeable change in the law due to our
See, the problem is like what do you mean by noticeable? Noticeable from the fans, by Scott, or
limited
what?
information on their
I mean, obviously
creation in
Scott would notice
2017,
as he's the
meaning
maker,
it
but like,
breaks
you know.
the second rule and cannot be the retcon. Even with the future games, we're learning that while the first Freddy's location was revealed to in fact open up in 1983,
They've been existing
which
since the
again we know in
70s.
2017, these
70s Freddy poster? Yeah!
characters
Hell yeah.
existed a lot earlier than that either way. Speaking of the first location, and the next theory is
Where's the poster of 70s Freddy?
William being charged and convicted.
Hey! This is what I was thinking of, but then I remembered that it can't really be a retcon because like Scott couldn't.
Was retconned. This comes from the fact that within the secret FNAF 1 newspapers, one has the title 5 children now reported missing, suspect convicted. Later reading, while the suspect was charged, the bodies themselves were never found.
See, like this is literally a direct contradiction. Scott, you can't say the sky is red and then say the sky is blue.
Which goes against the fact that years after these first murders, William was still freely running around in
Exactly.
both the FNAF 2 location and later the FNAF 1 location, which would be a pretty hard thing to be free to do after being found guilty with 5 counts of first-degree murder.
Child first-degree murder.
Heading over to our checklist,
And that's
this does
exactly what I
actually
said.
check
You don't get 2 years in jail for quintuple child homicide. That's just not a thing.
all 3 boxes. But so did the last one at first glance, so are there any arguments that could be made against this one? No, not really. Wait, is this really the retcon? Well, not only
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to go back to, well, I can't on stream, but I'm going to go back to one of my videos that I released about a year ago. And then I'll put some of my screenshotted messages where I was saying this 3 years ago.
only is there a piece of evidence that directly tells us that this plot point was, yes, intentionally retconned from the story, that I'll get into properly in a second, but we do know from the following game, FNAF 2, that William was still roaming around freely in 1987, years after the murders, where he even does this whole thing again in the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's
Exactly.
Pizza. And then in the next game, FNAF 3, we see him still roaming around freely, entering the FNAF 1 location and breaking down the animatronics before inevitably being springtrapped.
It was
there
not-
is actually evidence in the literal following games that he wasn't charged and convicted,
Yep.
but there's also a
Well, charged, we don't know, but convicted, yeah.
piece of evidence that I've been teasing since the start of the video. So let's just get into it. Within the Silver Eyes, we learn a lot about the murder.
Yeah, you're gonna pull up that page where they said a suspect was found and like they convicted him, then yeah, you get it.
And specifically the police's perspective on it all,
Yep.
through one of our main protagonists, Police Chief Clay Burke. Clay remembers
They
how the whole
arrested
police
someone.
department knew that it was William.
They
and that he
all,
was
yeah, they all, exactly. This page right here. They all knew it was him, but they just didn't have proof. It's like Light and L in Death Note.
indeed arrested, although explains that there were no bodies. They were
Yeah.
never found. And without their bodies,
Can't
justice
charge him.
penalizes the guilty, but it must also protect the innocent, which seems to prove he was never charged/convicted in itself. But
But he
then within
was.
that same book, we also get direct proof with the quote, "But there had been no evidence, there had been no bodies, and so there could be no charge." No
That's a chart. Yep. I think I landed on this one.
That's right, this explicitly tells us that the charge we read about in the FNAF 1 newspapers no longer exists in the story.
That's a
which also
retcon.
means the conviction is waved away too. So even if you had any doubts that FNAF 2 and FNAF 3 directly showed us it was retconned, the Silver Eyes is the exact moment we can read for ourselves that the plot point was changed and removed from the story intentionally. There's even more proof in the future too, with FNAF Help Wanted containing a death screen that specifically hints at it with a message
Nothing was ever proven in a court of law. And then that image that says you can't prove anything
was ever proven in a court of law, meaning him being convicted is impossible. This being the retcon makes a lot of sense. Within the isolated story of FNAF 1, the murderer was indeed locked away, but as the story needed to expand and the murderer needed to return, Scott simply retconned that plot point out of the canon. As I mentioned, William was indeed arrested, although that doesn't mean he was charged nor convicted. As the process goes, from charge, which is accusing them of committing a crime with serious evidence,
and then the conviction is being proven guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Further at the end of the process is when a conviction happens, which is when the person is officially declared guilty by a jury in court. So for this newspaper to still be true and not be retconned from the story, the police would have found serious evidence against William and he would have been found guilty in court. But thanks to the following games and the Silver Eyes though, we know that William was never charged specifically due to the lack of evidence, the buddies, and so the case against him was thrown out before it even reached the court and got anywhere close to a conviction. But wait, what if the quote was instead meant to be for Henry and the retcon was simply
What?
shifting the convicted from William to Henry instead? Well, not only would that in itself break the first and second rules, as Henry didn't even exist in the games until FNAF 6, and so it couldn't have been noticed, but also because the Silver Eyes also directly answers that too, with the quote, "At first he had suspected Henry, just like so many others around town, but Clay had resisted, had delayed having him arrested, and sure enough they came to William Afton." Which explicitly tells us that while they did all suspect Henry at first, they never actually made the
Why? Why not? And then why? Never mind.
arrest before they found their killer in William. The biggest part of all of this to me is that there seems to be no clear alternative explanation for this.
Yeah.
This coming from a factual newspaper means it's actually unable to be written off easily as a joke or exaggerating or anything similar. And alternate theories putting Henry as the convicted don't work either, since we know that he wasn't even arrested from the books, but also because he didn't even exist as a character in the games until FNAF 6 released. This is why I spent the majority of this video trying to debunk and give alternative explanations for the other options, because I'm so certain that this is indeed the retcon. This
Well, so am I.
option is the only one with no
It's the
real
only one that
argument
makes
against it,
sense.
and is actually 100% confirmed to be the case in the books at the very minimum. I've seen it argued that Scott simply didn't understand the meaning of the word convicted, but I think that's quite a large assumption to make, especially considering that he could have easily used suspects charged for the title like he uses within the story itself.
That's the thing. That's the problem. And then another issue is that we're dealing with a troll here as well.
Yet he didn't. He chose to use convicted, and also the fact that it actually works perfectly fine within the isolated lore from FNAF 1 itself. So
It's pretty. I can't be getting tired. We still got more theories to react to. This is bad. Alright, guys, we're pulling out the monster energy.
At first, the police suspect Henry, who was so shaken by the event that he seemed guilty, and they almost move in for the arrest until they find video surveillance that identifies William as the man in the mascot. And so the next morning, they arrest him on suspicion of murder, although they couldn't find the bodies, and so there was no evidence that he even murdered anyone, meaning the case against him was thrown out before a charge could even be made, and he was a free man. It's even stated in the Silver Eyes that after all of this, William literally leaves town, and there was nothing the police could do to stop him. All of this proving that Scott Cawthon's one confirmed retcon before FNAF 6 released that was a noticeable change in the story, while not being a confusion point in the community and barely noticed, was in fact that the newspapers in FNAF 1 stated that the murderer was charged and convicted. But before we end off, are there any other retcons in FNAF? Well, luckily for us, Scott actually answered that very question in the post about the retcon. Quote, "While it's true that the story has developed new details over time that may not have been planned from the beginning, that doesn't mean that the pieces don't fit together as a whole. There is a lot of information crammed into these games, and there will always be details that I don't convey 100% as intended. I try to clear up those items, but I'm certainly not retconning things at will. I have more respect for the community than that. So while people joke that FNAF has been retconned about 100 times, or that Scott changed his lore lore every other day, I genuinely don't think there's been more than this one retcon in the story, where a plot point has been actively and intentionally changed and or reverted. People will immediately point to Burn Trap, but in Security Breach
Burn Trap's
itself,
not a
we see
retcon.
that while the whole ending is animated, which admittedly, yes, of course it makes you believe that it's the canon ending, it's actually just another 2-star ending, with the only 3-star ending in the game that does later get revealed to be the canon ending being Princess Quest. It's almost exactly—
Wow, go figure. The only ending with 3 stars is canon.
like Sister Location, where we get a whole epic boss battle ending with Enid, the main villain, only to learn that it isn't even the canon ending. It wasn't retconned, it was just never the canon ending to begin with, although in Burn Trap's case it just really seemed like it was. So all in all, I truly
You got
believe
fooled.
that we have
That
the
happens.
answer to FNAF's one retcon, and while I don't like using the word confirmed, I do have to admit that the Silver Eyes does explicitly state it to be removed from the story, and therefore I do personally believe that this answer might actually be confirmed.
Me too. All right, next video. Oh, this is it. This is FNAF's theory that he lit the shush, 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 shush. This is the FNAF video that he released yesterday. It's a big one. It is a big one. I'm excited to see what exactly he meant by this. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna go to the bathroom before this video because I gotta pay maximum attention. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, let's just get right into it. Let's get right into it. Waste no time.
In December 2024, we received a content update for Help Wanted 2, where Steelwool hid a bunch of puzzle pieces throughout the game. If you collected all of the puzzle pieces and put them together, a building
Time to play!
would appear in front of you. When you walked up to the building, you were met with 4 numbers, 4625. When we first saw these numbers, everyone thought that that was going to be the release date of Secret of the Mimic, April 6th, 2025. Until the Secret of the Mimic trailer came out, and we got the actual release date, June 13th, 2025. So if 4625
I just saw it. I just caught it. I just caught it. Excuse me. My goodness. 4265. And then we got 61325. What's 1 plus 3? Oh, John. Wow. I caught that in 2 seconds, by the way.
5 isn't the release date, then what do the numbers mean? Well, I think those numbers are the key to solving Secret of the Mimic, including who we play as, what's going to happen,
It's 1 plus
and
3.
how the game is going to end.
Who do we play as? I don't know. What's going to happen? We probably...
Make sure to subscribe, and let's see if I can predict exactly what we're going to see in Secret of the Mimic
Here we go.
3 months before it comes out. Let's start with the building we saw in the Help Wanted 2 update. A lot of you might have seen this building and thought, what in the world am I looking at? And you might have thought this because we didn't really have much to go off of. We knew it was some sort of gift shop that was selling masks. We knew that it was associated with this logo and the letters MCM. And we knew because of the puzzle that there was some sort of factory either attached to it or located close by. A lot of this was brand new stuff that we've never seen before. But this stuff quickly started making sense once the Secret of the Mimic trailer came out 2 months later. In the trailer, we learn a bunch of stuff about the game. The game takes place in 1979, which is the earliest game we now have in the FNAF timeline. In it, we play as a Fazbear Entertainment employee being sent into an abandoned warehouse. This warehouse belongs to Edwin Murray, a contractor for Fazbear Entertainment who has apparently gone missing. This already answers a question from the Help Wanted 2 update. This factory-looking place in the background of the puzzle is Edwin's abandoned warehouse that we're going to be exploring in
It's abandoned factory.
If you don't know already, Edwin Murray is a character who is introduced in the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, and those books basically tell us everything we need to know about him. We learned that Edwin was a very talented engineer, and his job was to turn Fazbear Entertainment mascot costumes
into animatronics.
This is why throughout his warehouse you can see a bunch of mascot costumes all over the place. This is backed up by the official description for the game, where it states, "Enter the abandoned workshop of Murray's Costume Manor and unravel the mystery."
There's your MCM.
Left behind by the reclusive inventor Edwin Murray. This one sentence solves yet another mystery from Help Wanted 2. The logo featured on the top of the building and on the puzzle is the logo for Murray's Costume Manor, MCM. This building is the entrance to Edwin's abandoned warehouse. This is interesting because Edwin's warehouse in the books was seemingly nothing like this. In the books, the warehouse doubled as a living space for Edwin and his son, but also a workspace where Edwin could build his inventions.
Well, yeah,
The
people live in warehouses and
extremely
factories.
dirty and worn down. The name Murray's Costume Manor and the logo are also never mentioned in the books. In the games, it seems that Edwin's warehouse is almost acting similar to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, where the public could come and visit the warehouse to see Edwin's inventions in person, featuring a gift shop where people could buy toys and masks of their favorite characters. This is further proven by this part of the trailer, where we access a computer that says Reset Welcome Show. Not only was there a gift shop, there was also a welcome show that would play for people who visited Murray's Costume Manor, featuring Edwin's animatronic characters. But, like we learn in the trailer, Edwin has a trailer where we access a computer that says Reset Welcome Show. Not only was there a gift shop, there was also a welcome show that would play for people who visited Murray's Costume Manor, featuring Edwin's animatronic characters. But, like we learn in the trailer, Edwin has apparently gone missing, and Fazbear Entertainment is sending us into his warehouse to retrieve one of his inventions, the Mimic, the character we saw at the end of Security Breach Ruin. But what we're being told in the trailer might not be completely true. In the
What? You can't, yeah, but you can't claim that without like any outside basis stuff. No, you're good. But like, what the
trailer,
fuck?
we're being told that
One of our contractors, Edwin Murray, has gone missing, leaving our property abandoned in his warehouse. Your job is simple. Enter the warehouse and retrieve the technology that he was developing for us.
Bada bing, bada boom. All right, let's get right back into.
there's two key words that Fazbear might be lying about here. Quote, enter the warehouse and retrieve the technology that he was developing for us. In the story, the mimic
For us, as in the company.
warehouse and retrieve the technology that he was developing for us.
The company.
In the story, the
What happened to the? There it is. Okay. Hold on.
mimic from the Tales books, Edwin didn't make the mimic for Fazbear Entertainment. He made
That's literally what it says, though. Is that? Hold on.
enter the warehouse and retrieve the technology that he was developing for us.
See, but like, you'd be saying that.
In the story, The Mimic from the Tales books, Edwin didn't make the Mimic for Fazbear Entertainment, he made it for his son, David. The Mimic wasn't something he was hired to build, it was something he built in his free time for his son. So if Fazbear is saying the Mimic was being built for them, then either the story in the books will be different from the story in the games, or...
Nah, here we go. Here we go. FNAF.
us. In the story The Mimic from the Tales books, Edwin didn't make the Mimic for Fazbear Entertainment, he made it for his son, David. The Mimic
It's called being greedy. Has a greedy company never crossed your mind before?
decided not to leave this town. Maybe I can stay and find some other nice people who will like me and accept me for who I am.
Trusting your spirit, yes, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Sorry about that, chat. All right. Let's just get back into it. We're gonna go back a little bit.
Inventions. The building was described as being extremely dirty and worn down. The name Murray's Costume Manor and the logo are also never mentioned in the books.
So?
In the games, it seems that Edwin's warehouse is almost acting similar to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, where the public could come and visit the warehouse to see Edwin's inventions in person, featuring a gift shop where people could buy toys and masks of their favorite characters. This is further proven by this part of the trailer, where we access a computer that says Reset Welcome Show. Not only was there a gift shop, there was also a welcome show that would play for people who visited Murray's Costume Manor, featuring Edwin's animatronic characters. But, like we learn in the trailer, Edwin has apparently gone missing. In fact,
because he died in the storyteller.
Fazbear Entertainment is sending us into his warehouse to retrieve one of his inventions, the Mimic, the character we saw at the end of Security Breach Ruin. But what we're being told in the trailer might not be completely true. In the trailer, we're being told that
one of our contractors, Edwin Murray, has gone missing, leaving our property abandoned in his
property?
Warehouse. Your job is simple. Enter the warehouse and retrieve the technology that he was developing for us.
There's two
it's a prototype
that
endoskeleton.
Fazbear might be lying about here. Quote, enter the warehouse and retrieve the technology that he was developing for us. In the story The Mimic from the Tales books, Edwin didn't make the Mimic for Fazbear Entertainment, he made it for his son, David.
Well,
the
no,
Mimic wasn't
but
something he was hired to build, it was something he built in his free
Okay, so have you ever take a brat, for example. They think everything is for them, right? Wouldn't this be, and we know that this company is greedy, so the logic lines up.
time for his son. So if Fazbear
It went for me when it's not.
The Mimic
They
was
can,
being
they can
built
just say
for
that. People
them,
can
then
say, huh? Oh, yeah. People can just say things.
Either the story in the books will be different from the story in the games, or Fazbear Entertainment is lying. Fazbear could have easily
That's exact. There you go. They're lying.
heard what the Mimic was capable of.
It's a kind of prototype endoskeleton that can adapt to any costume and become any character.
And decided they wanted that technology for themselves. So now
Is that... That's what I said, yeah? Also, what's with the spiral eyes? Like, I feel like that's... I don't know.
that Edwin is missing, they came up with the plan to enter his warehouse and steal it.
Steal it. Exactly. Yes.
What the Mimic was capable of.
It's a kind of prototype endoskeleton that can adapt to any costume and become any character.
And decided they wanted that technology for themselves. So now that Edwin is missing, they came up with the plan to enter his warehouse
and steal it.
But I don't think Fazbear will stop there. I think some of the most unique and beloved characters from Security Breach were all taken from Edwin's warehouse as well. At the end of the trailer, we get to see this giant animatronic that is essentially an early version of DJ Music Man. The fact that this thing can be found in Edwin's warehouse all the way back in 1979 tells me that DJ Music Man was likely originally built by Edwin, with Fazbear taking Edwin's Maestro Music Man and using it to create
Maestro
the DJ
Music
we
Man
all know and love decades later. The daycare attendant from Security Breach was also likely built by Edwin as well. MatPat put out a great theory a couple years ago where he pointed out that the teeth on Eclipse match perfectly with the teeth on the Mimic, along with the general design of the characters looking similar. I think he was right, and we're gonna see the earliest version of the daycare attendant appear in Secret of the Mimic. These are just one or two examples of Edwin's inventions likely being taken and reused by Fazbear Entertainment. But I don't think it'll stop there. I think other characters from Security Breach could have been Edwin's as well, such as the Wet Floor Bots or even the Staff Bots. Here's why. In the books, we learned that one of Edwin's first inventions was a robotic vacuum cleaner. And in the recent update to 5 Laps at Freddy's, you can actually see a billboard advertising it. It was called Hugs, which could very well mean that Edwin was also the inventor of Mr. Hugs from FNAF 6. But the reason he created this robotic vacuum cleaner was because
turns out Edwin invented the Roomba.
Edwin believed in, quote, building useful machines that would change people's lives. He believed in automating life's most mundane tasks, and he was sure he could create robots to replace most household chores people didn't enjoy. This is why we see a robot in the trailer that was made exclusively to sort mail. This is Edwin automating a mundane task, and I think the wet floorbots and the staff
What is my purpose? You sort mail. Oh my god.
bots in Security Breach also fit that description. In general, I think there's a ton of stuff that Steelwool is hiding from us in this trailer. In the books, one of Edwin's jobs was to turn the mascot costume versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy into animatronics. So it's very possible that we're gonna see the original mascot versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy in Secret of the Mimic.
Hell yeah.
It might even look similar to the concept art that I talked about last year, featuring mascot designs of the core animatronics. I also think we're gonna see the original Fredbear and Spring Bonnie mascot costumes. In the trailer, you can see Fredbear's Family Diner posters hanging on the walls. The same
How can you tell what that is? What? How can you? I can't even tell. And I'm trying to like look.
same Fredbear's posters we found in Security Breach. Also, in one of the offices, you can see a pizza box sitting on the couch. Although you can't see the top of the box, I can tell you
It
from playing
looks
the
like
demo of the
Fast
game at
Entertainment.
PAX West that those pizza boxes have Fredbear's Family Diner logos on them. Fredbear's is clearly being teased in this game, and if you look at the poster featuring Bonnie, you can see that the design looks exactly like Glitch Trap. Glitch Trap
No, it
is the
doesn't.
original mascot costume version of Spring Bonnie, and after 6 years of seeing the digital version of this character, I think we're finally gonna see this Bonnie mascot costume for the first time physically in this game, along with the debut of the Fredbear mascot costume in the same style as the poster. You can also see the cutout of an alligator character in the trailer, which could very well be the earliest version of Monty. Not only that, I think we'll also see a Monty mascot costume in the game as well. With this game taking place in 1979, there's so much potential to see the earliest versions of characters we've known and loved for the past decade. But this game isn't about the old characters, it's about hunting down one of the newest ones. Fazbear Entertainment is clearly doing everything they can to retrieve the Mimic, and in the story The Mimic from the books, we see them doing the same thing. Once
With
Edwin
Dominic's
goes missing,
team.
Fazbear sends 3 employees to Edwin's warehouse, called Team A. Team A eventually does find the Mimic, but once they do, they each get brutally killed one by one. After Team A got completely wiped out, Fazbear did the common sense thing and just sent another team of people in.
Wow. Great. Wow. Dude, Fazbear has a billion IQ. 1 trillion IQ, guys. Wow. Wow.
Into the warehouse. Team B. While Team B was exploring the warehouse, they found
Wow,
audio
dude.
recordings left behind by Team A. This is how Team B found out about the Mimic. But even with the audio recordings, Team B still ended up getting wiped out by the Mimic. In the books, that's where the story ends. Both Team A and Team B fail to retrieve the Mimic. But although
Oh.
that's where the book ends, I think that's where Secret of the Mimic begins. I think we're
That's fair. Oh yeah. Because isn't this what what's his face said? Stick.
entering Edwin's warehouse after Team A and Team B. If you go to this part of the trailer, you can see an elephant mascot costume missing its arm. And if you brighten up the image, you can see a human arm hanging out of.
Holy shit. Okay.
The costume, wearing the same Fazbear uniform as us, with the same long sleeve shirt and gloves.
Oh.
This is someone from the previous teams who tried to retrieve the Mimic, but failed.
They got
and I'm willing to bet that we're also going to find audio logs from those previous teams throughout the game.
Yeah, that's going to be like the phone guy of the
team
game.
Going in after Team A and Team B. But what's interesting is that this time we're not a team. We're just one person. After sending in teams of at least 3 people at a time, Fazbear is now only sending in 1 person.
Send him in. Why do I feel like this person is Cassie? Nope. Is
Not
Cassie's
only that,
dad.
this game will probably end with us successfully retrieving the Mimic. I highly doubt that we're getting this whole game just to witness another failed attempt. So who is this one person who's actually able to get the job done?
It's William Afton. I'm kidding.
To me, this feels like Fazbear isn't messing around anymore. They know the one person who's capable of doing the job, and they're sending them in. Need more proof? Well, this is where we get to those four numbers, 4625. Like I said earlier, when we first saw these numbers, everyone thought it was the release date of the game, but that didn't end up being the case.
It could be because if you add 1 and 3, you get 4.
So what could the numbers mean? Well, look at the context of where we find the numbers. They're in front of the building on what looks to be a fancy looking mailbox. And what do you usually see?
Oh no. Oh.
At the front of buildings on a mailbox? An address. The numbers are the address to Edwin's warehouse. And while I was researching for this video, I could have sworn I've seen a mailbox just like this before. So I looked up fancy mailbox on Google and this came up. An almost 1-for-1 copy of the mailbox in Help Wanted 2. So now that we've established that this is the address of Edwin's warehouse, there's one important question left. Why does this matter? Well, its importance lies in what we do with the address. After getting the numbers, if you go back over to the table and take off the Vanny mask, a van appears next to you. When the doors of the van open, you can see the Mixes machine sitting inside.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, I popped off so hard my camera froze. Look at that shit. Oh snap.
In order to get the ending of the content update, you need to walk
Mexis came from his house.
up to Mixes and input a code. The code you put in is the address to Edwin's warehouse. 4625. Once you put in the address, you see Mixes appear, the doors shut, and the van drives off. This could mean a lot of things. Maybe it's telling us that Mixes was originally made at Edwin's warehouse, 4625. But if you include the context of the van driving off, I think the more likely answer is Steelwell is showing us where Mixes is being driven to. Once we put in that address, the van drives off. And how does the Secret of the Mimic trailer begin? With the van pulling up to Edwin's warehouse. 4625.
Hold on, he's cooking.
The ending of the Help Wanted 2 update is showing us how Secret of the Mimic will begin. This is further proof that Fazbear Entertainment isn't messing around this time. This one person isn't going in blind and unprepared like the previous teams, they're bringing Mixes with them. Mixes being around all the way back in 1979 was also heavily teased in the interview I did with Steelwell Studios.
That is deliberately supposed to be an older machine. So
Okay.
the Whopper being like a good example of like, hey, here's a supercomputer.
But it's old.
Before computers are like this big. The model just is not a modern computer.
No, it's not. It's very old.
It looks old.
I think Secret of the Mimic is going to show us why Mixes was built in the first place. But I think the more interesting question is, who do we play as in this game? Who created Mixes and brought it to Edwin's warehouse? Well, it has to be someone who's a genius engineer capable of creating something like Mixes, and it has to be someone who would be old enough in 1979 to do the job.
Don't say Henry. Don't do
I
it.
believe that person could be Henry.
God damn it! I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna say that, you fucking fuck. How could you? I knew you were gonna say I knew he was gonna say Henry. How did I know? He loves, and I mean he loves comparing these two or putting them together.
Emily. I think that could make sense because Henry is a genius engineer, just like Edwin. So he would more or less know how to use all of the equipment that
Oh shit, we could be playing as a young Henry.
Edwin left behind. And he would be old enough in 1979 to do the job. I originally thought we could play as Cassie's dad, but if
Yeah, he'd be 13 at this
Cassie's
time.
dad really is the Bonnie bully from the bite of 1983, he would at most be 15 years old in 1979.
Whoa, where'd you get 19? 19 years old?
Which is way too young.
You think this kid is 19?
I also think it's very possible that Henry was the one who created mixes. In my last theory video, I explained why this could be the case. In Security Breach,
Because he, oh yeah.
we get to see Henry's labyrinth that he created to burn everyone to the ground in FNAF 6. And in Ruin, the door that leads us directly to mixes is in Henry's labyrinth. Not only that, if you go through the door, you're met with what looks to be an extremely old staircase that leads right to the room with the mixes machine. Why is the room with mixes directly connected to Henry's labyrinth? Well, I think it might be because Henry had something to do with mixes. To summarize, after Edwin Murray went missing, Fazbear Entertainment discovered the Mimic and came up with a plan to steal it. But after sending in two teams of people, Team A and Team B, who never made it out alive, they realized this wasn't a job for a regular employee. They needed one of their best engineers to step in. Henry Emily. Henry isn't going into that warehouse empty-handed though. He would then create Mixes, a supercomputer equipped with an antivirus that would help take down the Mimic. Henry then loaded Mixes into his van and drove to Edwin's abandoned factory, where he would use Mixes to successfully take down the Mimic all by himself. This is one of those theories that will immediately be proven right or wrong in the first 5 minutes of Secret of the Mimic, so it feels like a big swing. But I really do like the idea of the 4 numbers being an address, and by putting that address into Mixes, Steelwool is showing us where Mixes is being taken, and how Secret of the Mimic begins. I also think us playing as Henry would make sense, but it's very possible that we could be playing as just a random employee who happened to be the one person who took down the Mimic. We could also very well be playing as Cassie's dad, but that would
Which
mean
is also
either the
bullshit.
Bonnie bully in the bite of 83 is way older than we thought, or Steelwool's gonna have to do a bit of retconning. Either way,
Or he's just not the body bully. Like what? Why is that not one of your possibilities?
subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
All right, good job. I will say, okay, I like the theory. I like
wondered what your home
I'm gonna be honest, I don't give a shit. On to the next one. ID's Fantasy. Let's do it.
With the Secret of the Mimic trailer out, we're finally getting a look at the Mimic's backstory through one of the games. And we got a substantial amount of information from the trailer alone, with a lot of it seeming to draw from the original Mimic story in the Tales from the Pizzaplex books. However, while a large portion of the community seems to believe this proves that the Tales books are in the same timeline as the games, also known as the
Which it does.
Tales games theory, there's a significant number of fans that think it's evidence towards the exact opposite. So what
And they're wrong.
does the trailer really tell us about the Mimic story? Are the books
It tells us that exactly what happened, bro. Isn't it odd that the end result of the Mimic's origin story, isn't it odd that every single detail except for maybe that one scratch on his left arm or that one stub on his right toe is the same?
accurate to the games, or is there anything that would imply they're separate? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to explain
Oh my god, you're looking for anything. Anything.
just what evidence the trailer has for the Tales games theory and what I think the story of Secret of the Mimic will actually be.
Oh my god, dude. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can react to this one. I'm gonna cry. Oh my god. Well, I need to like, no. Okay, whatever. Can't delay it any longer.
But before I get into that, I just wanted to announce really quickly that I've launched membership benefits. Give it a look. I would really appreciate it. Anyway, for those who may not have seen the trailer, it starts with a Fazbear Entertainment van pulling up to what's presumably the location we're going to be in during the game. As the voiceover explains that one of Fazbear Entertainment's contractors, Edwin Murray, disappeared with Fazbear property abandoned in his warehouse. Our job is to go in and get the technology Edwin was working on for Fazbear, specifically an endoskeleton that can fit in any character costume and become that character. We're shown a few examples of these characters, including Jackie, a Jack-in-the-Box clown that appeared in December's Help Wanted 2 content update, as well as a blue mushroom man and a white tiger with green and blue eyes. The voice also warns that they suspect the endoskeleton may be malfunctioning, so there's a chance of injury. And because it wouldn't be Fazbear Entertainment without them downplaying just how dangerous things are, the voice also says they expect retrieving the endo will go smoothly despite the risk of death or dismemberment. We get some nice shots of the location, including a costume with a dead guy's arm sticking out of it, and a fun prototype Music Man jump scare before the voice denies all liability Fazbear Entertainment may have for sending you into a death trap with an endoskeleton that has murderous tendencies. For those who are familiar with the story titled The Mimic in the Tales from the Pizzaplex series, the connections are pretty obvious. For those who aren't familiar or need a refresher, The Mimic is a story that comes in two parts. The first part focuses on Edwin Murray, who sold his company to Fazbear Entertainment when the death of his wife and having to raise his son as a single parent led to him being unable to save his failing vacuum business. In the story's present, Edwin and his 4-year-old son David live in Edwin's factory where Edwin makes animatronics for various Fazbear characters like Chica and Bonnie. But David, being a small child who needs attention and isn't old enough to be in school, has a tendency to get on his father's nerves while Edwin is supposed to be working. Realizing he doesn't have the time to give David the attention he needs and do his job at the same time, Edwin makes his son a playmate inspired by how he made David a white tiger bed to mimic David's favorite toy, a white tiger plushie. Edwin designs a legless endoskeleton called the Mimic, programmed to imitate what it sees, and the Mimic does its job pretty well, imitating David eating food, drawing scribbly pictures, and even copying the way David held his white tiger plushie. All's well and good until David dies in a car accident, and Edwin has a breakdown after he sees the Mimic continuing to mimic his son. In a fit of rage, he does his best to beat up the Mimic. He beats
the absolute shit out of it, bro.
This is a series where you do not want to feel strong negative emotions in such close proximity to any animatronic endoskeletons, because
or
those
anything
emotions
metal
will leak out into the environment and latch on to the metal of those endoskeletons pretty hard. As such, Edwin's murderous rage flowed from him into the Mimic, which leads into the story's part 2. This portion of the Mimic story follows a team of Fazbear Entertainment workers who were sent to Edwin's factory after he disappeared, and the property ended up in Fazbear Entertainment's hands due to the breach of contract. They were told to clean and fix stuff up as necessary, but not much more than that. What they also weren't told was that a month before, a different team had been sent to that location. One of the workers only finds out after finding a satchel left behind by a member of the previous team, along with a device that had recordings of what the previous team was doing. Turns out, in addition to doing some temporary patch jobs on the leaky roof and finishing up some projects that were laying around, the original team found a certain legless endoskeleton that seemed pretty advanced, so they decided to take a
Did you add the part? Something interesting to know is that at this point, Mimic still doesn't have. Yeah, Mimic still doesn't have legs.
Pair of
it
legs
says
from
in the
another
thing.
non-functional animatronic and stick them on there. As you can probably
That's
guess,
a horrible
giving the literally
idea.
rage-filled murder machine additional means to get around did not go well for them.
No,
Despite Team
it
E's
didn't.
efforts to hide under piles of moldy lace from before Edwin bought the factory, find an escape route that didn't involve the front doors that closed behind them and locked from the outside as soon as they walked in,
Great.
just generally survive, they all ended up dying pretty brutal deaths, which seems to be where we come in during Secret of the Mimic. After the A and B teams failed, we're sent in as Team C and tasked with getting a hold of the Mimic. However, this is where things start to get a bit complicated on the debate side of things. While it seems pretty straightforward that the premise of the game leads in from the events of the Mimic story in Tales, some people have claimed that elements of the trailer contradict Tales in a way that makes the Tales game's theory impossible, or at least unlikely.
Those people have preconceived beliefs and are doing everything they can to debunk the theory.
But are those supposed contradictions actually valid, or are there explanations that could prove Tales game still works?
It's what do you mean still? What do you mean still works? It's people are acting like
Something that was quickly pointed out was
Never
that
mind,
the
dude.
Fazbear representative in the
Jesus.
trailer claims that Edwin made the Mimic specifically for Fazbear Entertainment.
That's a lie. That is a lie. That is a company being greedy fucks.
which is absolutely not the case in the Tales story where he makes it for his son. However,
That's
Fazbear
called a
Entertainment
lie.
notoriously lies about this.
Thank you.
So it's possible that Fazbear is just claiming Edwin made the first place. In the Tales story, Edwin didn't make the mimic for them, and the entirety of both the A and B teams were very dead by the time all was said and done. So unless Edwin told Fazbear about his son's robot playmate for whatever reason, there'd be no way for Fazbear to have heard about it if Secret of the Mimic is the third attempt at checking out the building after Edwin dipped. That being said, if we're not the C team, but rather the D or even E team, it could be possible that a member of a C team did make it out and report somehow, despite the front door supernaturally locking itself and the windows being boarded up for both the A and the B teams. Then maybe they refused to go back or something, so we were sent in and actually given a clue about what we were getting into. I personally think it's a bit of a stretch, but it's possible, so I
Don't say we're playing as Henry.
think it should be mentioned. There are also some other things that can be explained away pretty easily, like the mushroom costume in the book being fuchsia, where in the game, Mushroom Man is blue. For all we know, maybe there were just two costumes or something. Minor things that don't really matter and do have plausible explanations. However, there are several things that are a lot more difficult to explain away that I
Like
think
what?
haven't been given
Like
the
what?
weight they deserve. For example, Edwin Murray in the books was not a contractor for Fazbear Entertainment.
Oh my god, dude. That's again, that doesn't matter.
Yes, he did have a contract with them in the books, but that was because he sold his family company to them, making him an employee under the Fazbear Entertainment umbrella,
This is semantics.
not a contractor.
This is, bro, oh my god, that's semantics. That's semantics.
Someone is a contractor, legally speaking, they are hired to provide services for another company but are not employed by them. For example, I could be considered a contractor thanks to the sponsor of today's video,
Oh my god. I don't care.
Personally, since purple is one of my favorite guarantee refund policy, no questions asked. So you don't need to be worried about giving them a try. In Tales from the Pizzaplex was not, and I can't see a reason to get 20% off the best-selling everyday earbuds. Brought to you by Raycon. Anyway, while I may be a contractor, Edwin in Tales from the Pizzaplex was not, and I can't see a
doesn't
reason
matter.
why Fazbear Entertainment would lie about that.
That doesn't
Lying about
matter.
the mimic
But they'll lie about what? You don't see a reason they'll lie about that, but they'll lie about the endoskeleton. Like, do you guys witness the real-time mental gymnastics that you need to do to debunk Tales games? There's so much evidence for it. It's like,
being made for them makes sense, since that would give an even more solid foundation for the claim about it being their property.
oh my
Why
god,
is
it's a lie.
Edwin a contractor when he isn't one? It just seems
Dude, the why would you call me literally any name if I'm not that?
really weird to me unless, in the game version of events, he didn't sell his company to them and Fazbear Entertainment legitimately just contracted his services and the two companies worked closely together. Hence the
You can do both.
Fazbear posters and stuff all over the place. Similar to how Scott Cawthon owns Five Nights at Freddy's, but Steel Wool associates itself heavily with FNAF since they are the company hired to make the recent games. If this were the case, it would also explain another compatibility issue between the book and the game. Namely, the extremely notable differences they have regarding the state of the building the Mimic is in. And I'm not
Oh my...
to how the trailer calls it a warehouse while the book calls it a factory. In Tales from the Pizzaplex, the factory's in pretty rough shape. The first floor windows are boarded up and there's piles of moldy lace.
We haven't
everywhere
seen
since
the whole
Edwin had
location,
left
bro.
all the lace and lace-making machinery that was there when he bought the place lying around. Some offices in the top portion of the building were modified into a living space for Edwin and David, and there was a slide on the staircase for David to play on, but other than that, the building looked old and abandoned. Contrast that with what we see in the trailer where, yeah, it's abandoned in the sense that Edwin left, but it looks nothing like described in the book. There's no piles of moldy lace. It looks to be in generally good condition and like
No,
it
it does
was actively
not.
used as a well-functioning business. Not to mention, the official game description calls the place Murray's Costume Manor.
It also calls it abandoned.
Which is also likely referring to the building from Help Wanted 2's content update, since it has the same symbol as the top of the puzzle in the update that's labeled with the initials of Murray's Costume Manor, MCM. Why would Edwin Murray's factory be officially considered a costume manor, given his business that he sold was a vacuum company? One could argue Fazbear Entertainment forced him to make the factory into a costume manor, but that doesn't explain why it would be named after Edwin if he did sell his company to them like in the books.
Because it's his
explain
factory,
why both
bro.
The A and B team in the book are exploring something that does not match what we are shown in the Help Wanted 2 and Secret of the Mimic trailer. Unless someone managed to overhaul the entire building with the Mimic actively hunting them down, or they moved the Mimic to a different building Edwin somehow also had when he was too broke to own a house separate from his factory instead of just to wherever Fazbear wanted the Mimic to end up, this building is incompatible with what we see in the books. Even more incompatible is just the FNAF timeline generally. Based on the original teaser from last year, Secret of the Mimic takes place in the year 1979. Meanwhile, part 2 of the Tales from the Pizzaplex story takes place in January, about a month after the A team was scoping out the place in December. If we're sent the same year as Team B, and assuming the A team was sent the same year Edwin disappeared, that would make part 1 of the story take place in the year 1978. 5 years before that, Edwin was 24 years old and his wife was pregnant with their son, which would
Here we go. Yeah. You can't use, this is not an argument because all the dates and Tales are fucked up. You can't use the dates.
be in the year 1973. Meanwhile, the Tales from the Pizzaplex story,
All this argument is invalid because you can't use the dates.
storyteller takes place at the fully functional Pizzaplex when Edwin is 64 years old, which, based on the dates
You
we're
can't-
given, puts
nope.
the events of the storyteller in the year 2013.
Nope.
Meanwhile, FNAF 3 takes place 30 years after Freddy's closed. And even if you went with the earliest known closing of Freddy's after the missing children incident in 1985 instead of FNAF 1, that would still put the game in 2015. And since FNAF 3 is a prerequisite for Pizzeria Simulator, which the Pizzaplex is built on top of, it is literally impossible for the timeline of events in the books to work with the games.
That means there's a problem with the books. No. Impulse 7, no. There's Impulse 7 had a video explaining this. I knew this argument was coming. It's not a problem with the games. It's a problem with Tales itself. Scott doesn't know dates. All the dates are messed up.
While sure, sometimes the books can be weird with dates and ages, such as the Silver Eyes having Charlie go missing in 82 while her grave is marked 83, with the age the robot version of her claims to be not matching either of those options, the time spans and ages given in the Mimic plotline of Tales are entirely internally consistent. While on its own I can
They're
see it
not.
being written off as a mistake, it's not just the dates that's the problem. It's the state of the factory, it's Edwin being a contractor, it's Fazbear
All of these are meaningless. Oh.
knowing about the Mimic. Yeah, sure, you could probably find some way to explain a decent portion of it, but would that really make more sense than this just being the way it is in the games, given—
Okay, so what about... So that's the logic you use for this side, but all the other sides of the argument, like literally all the other sides of the argument where, oh, it makes sense it tells in the games, you're like, nah.
and this is a
Like you gotta hold the same logic for both sides of the argument.
franchise with multiple timelines to begin with. Would it really make more sense for Fazbear to be lying about both hiring Edwin to make the Mimic and him being a contractor? For there to be someone sent in before us who escaped to tell Fazbear the Mimic existed in the first place? For the factory to somehow become Murray's costume manor after Edwin disappeared despite the Mimic loose in the building and Edwin not being there? There's a philosophical principle called Occam's razor, which basically says that the
And you have to apply that to both sides of the argument, not just anti-Tales games.
simplest solution tends to be the correct one. Though I
The simplest solution is that the books are in the games.
also employ the policy of trying to make sure all evidence is actually accounted for. While there might be a way for Tales games to work, I think Occam's razor suggests that rather than Tales flat out being the game's story, concepts from the books that are compatible with the story wanted for the games are pulled in, while things that don't work as well are altered or left behind as necessary to make things narratively cohesive.
That's essentially the same thing.
And understandable to an audience that, if we're being honest, largely has not read the book.
Why would they add Tiger Rock? Why would they put Tiger Rock in the...
Books and needs to get the backstory without having to do hours worth of external research. I see this similar to how the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is
What?
based on
Whoa.
well are altered or left behind as necessary to make things narratively cohesive and understandable to an audience that, if we're being honest, largely has not read the books and needs to get the backstory without having to do hours worth of external research.
Yeah, but that's not an excuse though. You can't just say, I don't want to, so you gotta do it differently. That's not how it works.
I see this similar to how the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is based on the first game and has a lot of similarities in its character names and location, but also has major changes to its characters and the story to make it work for the different medium and to accommodate an audience that wouldn't necessarily have all of the backstory that dedicated fans would be aware of. No matter how many similarities it does have, the fact that there are differences that are 100% incompatible with the games makes the FNAF movie a separate continuity from them, and I personally think that evidence points to Secret of the Mimic being a similar case.
It's not. What?
Edwin being a contractor instead of an employee and having a full-blown
Dude, that doesn't matter. That doesn't.
The most straightforward solution I can see is that in the games, Edwin actually made a successful company, but only when he focused on animatronics and costumes rather than vacuums. My guess is circumstances in the game timeline were different enough to where, when vacuums started failing, Edwin was able to shift gears into Murray's costume manner. Since in the books he sold his company because he couldn't manage saving his failing business after.
Or you know, that the events just happened, and the fact that one is a book and one is a game means that the adaptation's not going to be exactly one-to-one.
His wife died in childbirth and he became a single father, his success here could be because his wife didn't die, so he was actually able to save his company. He may have even made the Mimic for Fazbear Entertainment rather than his son, considering the white tiger in the trailer is a mascot costume that was never mentioned in the book.
It's also a plush. It's both.
Either way, people die and we get sent in to clean up the mess, but it would be presented in a way that would make sense to people who might only be playing the games rather than reading the books. But hey, this is all just a theory based on a trailer. The game could provide ways to make more things compatible with Tales that I haven't thought of, and I don't blame anyone for believing Tales games to be accurate given the number of similarities there are. I just personally think the differences are pronounced enough that the Tales books work.
How are the differences more pronounced than the similarities? That doesn't make sense.
Best as a separate continuity that just so happens to have a lot of similarities to the games. But
that's not Occam's razor right there. That right there is not Occam's razor.
Comes out in June. Don't forget to check out channel memberships if you're in.
Next video.
Being a teen in New York City.
I don't care. I'm not even in New York.
Cry for help. Right away, no, this isn't a cry for help. I'm not saying the FNAF lore is unsolvable because I've hit a wall or I'm giving up or anything like that. But I think as someone who regularly claims to have solved the FNAF lore and whose main job has been trying to do that for the past 3 years, I'm uniquely qualified to make the claim that the FNAF lore is indeed unsolvable. But like I mentioned in this title, that's not a slash at the quality of the FNAF lore. This isn't a dig at Five Nights at Freddy's at all. Far from it, actually, because I believe the unsolvability of the lore is one of its biggest strengths. So Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. Also, I'm gonna try to mellow out this episode. Let me know if you prefer this style or the more energetic hyper style that I kind of leaned into. First things first, we have to narrow down the difference between lore and story, because they are two different things. At least I'll be using them in two very different ways throughout this video. Every game has a story. Yes, every single one, through the creation of them, even all the way back to Pong. Pong, this game, has a story intrinsically in the gameplay. It's a competitive game. The story of the game is you are trying to beat someone else, and whoever has the most points by the end of the game is the winner. The story of Pong is that of competition with a winner and a loser. It's intrinsic to gameplay. Of course, most games, especially modern games, have more complex and convoluted stories than that, telling the player who they are, where they need to go, and the context of the story going on. But this isn't lore, this is story. For the purposes of today's video, lore is a separate category, and while a majority of video games—
Well, isn't lore like a hidden story? The hidden story? There's like an umbrella. Story is the umbrella term, and lore is like a component of that. Yeah. Lore is a story, and then you have like the hidden story, which is the lore.
have lore, whereas story is intrinsically linked to gameplay, lore isn't, so some games can completely forego lore, Pong obviously being one of them. Lore is the world, the settings in which a story takes place. In a way, it's story that's unnecessary to the main game. Story that isn't intrinsic to the actions you're taking. Lore is the story that informs the world around you, and maybe the player yourself. You can fully play a game without interacting with the lore at all, and you wouldn't be lost. Maybe wanting to know more, but you wouldn't be confused. Whereas if you tried to play a game without its story, you would just be pushing buttons to see what happened. Now, most games have story and lore to some extent. One of my favorites being Hollow Knight. The basic story is that you are this bug, the Knight, and for whatever reason, you're drawn to this subterranean kingdom to rid it of its infestation of this orange gas, and along the way you find yourself drawn to defeating the Radiance, something that seems to be the cause of this infection. Along the way you meet several NPCs and enemies that enrich the story you're unfolding, but you're never quite sure what's really going on, and you don't need to. As the Knight, all you need to know is where to swing your sword, or nail. However, Hollow Knight does have a very deep and storied lore to it, something that is honestly hard to find in-game and easy to miss. Honestly, I highly recommend watching YouTube channels like Mossbag to learn more about the Hollow Knight lore, but it's lore that you can fully enjoy the game without ever knowing. Whereas the story, you just find out by playing the game. Typically, when a video game has a story and lore, there's two main categories that it tends to fall into. Either the story will be very complex and intricate, and the lore will be sort of bare bones just to cover the world building, or the story and lore will be similarly complex and convoluted. An example of the former is Celeste, one of my favorite platformers. The lore of Celeste is fairly bare bones. It is primarily just the mountain Celeste, something that many climbers have tried and many climbers have failed. And that's all that there needs to be, because the real story and depth of Celeste is in its characters, the ones you play as and the ones you meet, all of them having interesting and fleshed out character arcs that develop over the course of the game. You, the player character, have an intense and dramatic character arc throughout the entire ascent that feels amazing to play through. It's a beautiful game with a beautiful story and just enough lore to make the world building make sense. The other category of games can be seen very clearly in something like Skyrim. The story of Skyrim is complex and vast. There are hundreds of quests that you can do that form and break relationships, all while attaining one key goal in the back of your mind. It's an insanely long and diverse game to complete, but equally, if not more complex than the story, is the lore of Skyrim. As part of the Elder Scrolls series, the world of Tamriel is vast and storied and historic and filled throughout various previous games in the franchise, but even just focusing on Skyrim, the world building here is insane. The architecture, the people,
alright, I'm starting to see what he's saying.
There is enough side literature that's just found lying around the game that Brian David Gilbert made an entire Unraveled video just talking about those books. None of them needed to be there.
Good
You're
God.
not really missing anything if you don't pick a single one up, but that is deep and complex lore. It's a game whose story and lore are equally vast. So why do I bring this up? That was a lot of not Five Nights at Freddy's. Well, I think one of the biggest strengths of Five Nights at Freddy's
is its basic story,
into neither of these two major
but a complex lore.
Now, I'm not going to say that FNAF is the first game to ever do this, but I think they are genuinely a pioneer for focusing on just the lore and having the story be as bare bones as necessary to convey pieces of that lore. The story of FNAF 1 is incredibly basic. You are a night security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You're told that the animatronics can get a little quirky at night, and you should protect yourself by keeping them out of the office. It's never intrinsically made clear if they're haunted or just malfunctioning, but you know if they get to you, you'll die. By the end of the game, you'll learn that your name is Mike Schmidt, and that's really all we get. And that's all you need to know to play that game. That's all the intrinsic story there is. It's reminiscent of older arcade games like Pac-Man, where sure, you're this guy, you eat pellets, and you eat ghosts. That's all you need to know. Do your game. But meanwhile, while those arcade games also had similarly lackluster lore, FNAF on the other hand puts all of its eggs into one basket, the lore. It's incredibly complex and hard to parse, even starting at just FNAF 1, again keeping it focused on this game, there is a lot of lore about what has happened at these restaurants, why these animatronics are attacking us, and why they might be targeting our player. Not to mention, as the series goes on, with drippings of lore through the multimedia landscape that is Five Nights at Freddy's. Rare Easter eggs that hint towards parts of a story you've never been able to see. Vague and artistic 8-bit scenarios of something you've never heard of but think you can guess where it's going. All of these pointing to some deeper story that isn't directly connected to the game at all, besides the location. If anything, the games of Five Nights at Freddy's are more so formalities to deliver pieces of lore to the player. Events that happen on the side of the main story that we've never been allowed to see. For most of the franchise, these games don't really have a direct story. You're kind of just doing stuff off to the side. So already, FNAF storytelling focuses on lore differently than most games, and I think that's important to establish when talking about its lore. But what about that lore makes it unsolvable? Of course. Am I too boring for you now, Mark? You know what? Fine. If you're not going to sit with me, I'm just going to have to take some extreme measures.
I want to show you how to earn a safe and
I don't care. I don't give a fuck because my ad blocker for some reason isn't working.
When talking about the unsolvability of the FNAF lore, it truly depends on which games of the franchise you're talking about. The ones that were made by Scott Cawthon directly, or the ones that were written by him and instead made by Steel Wool. The way I see it, when you solve a mystery, you need evidence. And for that evidence to be valuable to you, you need all of it, and some sort of assurance that it's reliable and truthful evidence. So in this definition, things can be unsolvable if you either don't have all the evidence, or the evidence you have is unreliable. The Scott Games era of FNAF leans into the unreliability. And I'm not even talking about Help Wanted.
It's because of the... Don't say Help Wanted. Yeah.
Wanted yet. I know that game introduced the idea that FNAF 1 through 6, at the least, are in-universe games, made by an unreliable narrator, Steve Snodgrass. Now, to be fair, Help Wanted establishes that those games are replicas of real-life events.
Yeah, we know.
Because they are creations, technically everything within them is unreliable.
Yeah.
Putting that aside for a moment, the information in these early FNAF games was already unreliable. We never get direct names of characters, direct notes of what happens, security footage.
But we get implications and they'll stay consistent.
We get is one-off first and last names throughout the series, pieces of subtext that is hidden in mini-games, newspaper clippings that mention rumors of something happening but nothing directly, and as mentioned before, death minigames whose pixel art is ambiguous at best. Combine that with the multimedia nature of the lore and its several continuities. The vast, overwhelming majority of information we have on William Afton and Henry Emily, the two most important characters in this storyline, come from a series of books that have been confirmed to not take place within the timeline of the games. And at the same time, they are the sources of some of the most crucial information for some of the most important characters in this series. Looking at the first 7 games, you can make assumptions and you can make educated guesses, but you really can't ever truly claim to have guaranteed to have solved a piece of that lore. It's all too ambiguous. But that's just the Scott Games.
Yes, but no.
The current story of FNAF being made by Steel Wool has both of these issues. Starting with the new one, we don't have all the information yet. To solve a mystery, you need all the available evidence in front of you. And the current story arc of Five Nights at Freddy's is about halfway through, it feels like. We don't have all the information, and we likely won't for a long time. Think about the original series of Five Nights at Freddy's, those first 7 games. The majority of questions from FNAF 2 didn't have a good answer until FNAF 6. Sure, you can look at Give Gifts, Give Life and sort of assume what's going on, but we had no idea who any of these people were until at least 5 games later. We didn't even have a solid idea of who the protagonist of FNAF 1 is until Sister Location, the 5th mainline game. And even still, the fact that Mike Schmidt is an alias for Michael Afton is
also true.
Speculation at best.
No, it's not. Okay, no. That's confirmed.
massive amount of information in Security Breach and Help Wanted. While much of it can be pieced together to make some sort of sense, I strongly believe that the majority of it isn't even meant to be solved yet. It's information that we can't act upon.
Well, yeah, it's not
we
done.
don't have the answers to it. And answers we've never thought to ask the questions for. I'm almost certain the Nightmarion plushes is one of those answers. We have a lot of theories on it. FNAF has several theories on what they might mean. I'm starting to think that they might just be a reference to Help Wanted because it's a VR game.
Yeah.
And in the current era, Nightmarion is seen by the public as a creation for the VR games.
Yep.
But both my interpretation and FNAF's theories on it are just speculation. Because to be honest, I think it's a question we haven't thought to ask yet. Something that we'll learn within the next couple games to ask. And like I mentioned, there's still a reliability issue on top of all of this.
Especially with the story, bruh. They fucked up the Steel Wool or the Security Breach story hard.
Is literally an in-universe VR game, so everything in it is up to suspect. After Cassie puts on the mask in Ruin, she receives an optical nerve chip or something, which distorts her vision. So
Everything from that point on is questionable.
From then on out is technically up to suspect. We're not sure what she's really seeing. If Gregory truly was GGY and working for Glitchtrap before
That's the next video.
Security Breach, he would have also worn that mask and received that chip, which in turn means everything we see in Security Breach is technically up to suspect. Nearing the end of this rant, I hear you. This doesn't sound like a good thing. So far, this sounds like I've been complaining the entire time. If the focus of the games is the lore and not the story, and this lore is so unreliable and piecemeal, why is that something so many people are drawn to? And why have other games attempted it and failed miserably, like Hello Neighbor?
Poppy Playtime's doing a good time.
Exact same lore. For one, we have more than enough of it. Frankly, we almost have too much of it. While yes, there is a lack of reliability in all the information we have from these games, all the information we have is piles and stacks and books worth of information. So much so that there's 3 major wikis for the game, several guides that are all either incomplete or slightly incorrect, and a character encyclopedia that has so many characters that they couldn't get half the facts right, but is still somehow missing half of the major characters. Ugh, I got cat hair in my eye. Even when the real Mark leaves, his shadow remains. But not only that, Five Nights at Freddy's lore mimics real-life mysteries, where we're left to pick up the pieces in the aftermath. The true crime fandom is something that frankly makes me uncomfortable. Like, these are stories about real people and real tragedies that really happened. Why are we commodifying it? I don't like that. However, I do understand the aspect of enjoying the mystery of it all, because that same quality is what's present throughout all of Five Nights at Freddy's.
I know I don't do like a lot of talking or commentary on RyeToast videos, but that's just because like the style he does, you just gotta listen, you know, and then you can comment on it.
The story is simple and something we don't have to
I won't lie, he's very
which is
captivating.
on purpose, because it's just the sieve that's going to deliver the lore to us. The lore is so sporadic and dripped that we are scrambling for any drops we can find. We have no clue what has actually happened in this background story, but we can hear its echoes. We were never invited to the dinner, but we see the crumbs left on the plate. We didn't see the stampede, but we found the footprints in the snow. Literally, one of the most debated pieces of evidence in this series is 3 pixel art footprints. And we, as the fans of this fandom, have to take these discordant pieces and find connections where there frankly often aren't.
That's the thing
of Five Nights at Freddy's is its lore and not its individual stories. All the story of the games are side characters trying to survive while the important stuff happens in the background. The point of solving Five Nights at Freddy's lore is like trying to recreate a script for a Broadway show when all you have are the leftover tickets, or dumpster diving at a Michelin star restaurant to try to steal its recipes. We're constantly sifting through the wreckage to look for its blueprints. That's the magnetic draw that FNAF has. It's why this fandom is so voracious for any scrap of information we can find, because we feel like we're constantly so close to that one key piece of information that'll slot in perfectly and explain everything we've been asking about. But at the same time, there's a fear that a different piece of information can come in like a wrecking ball and change the entire thing. And I don't think I've ever experienced a story where I recognize and admit that one piece of information could change everything I thought I knew about.
Literally
And it's
everything.
something that Five Nights at Freddy's has done exceptionally well, because its real story, the lore, is something that's long settled, and we just have to follow the rumor mill to find it. I mean, hell, when I tried to piece together the lore, I literally made a conspiracy board. I know this is a different kind of video than I usually make, but I was thinking about the FNAF lore and I kind of got nostalgic. So I guess take this as a love letter to the series. Now don't forget.
Okay. I like that video. All right, next one. Yeah, last video, by the way.
Why did you stop being a vigilante? The line was crossed. I was raised.
Escape the Pizzaplex is the next book set to come out in the series of interactive novels for Five Nights at Freddy's, and its release date is on April 1st. But we just got a preview of about 30 or so pages to tease the upcoming release. And I'm not exaggerating when I say these 30 pages have some of the biggest lore confirmations and deconfirmations for Security Breach since the game came out. Frankly, these 30 pages tell us more about Gregory and Cassie than 89% of the Tales in the Pizzaplex stories combined. This
GGY.
This book is going to be huge for the lore, but for now we can at least talk about the preview that got released. And I heard your feedback. Thank you for being honest and constructive with it, for the most part. I think I went too far in mellowing out, but I still want to try some different styles, so I think today is going to be the middle ground. Not quite as mellow as I was, but not super fast like I had been going. Right around
Fair
here.
enough.
This is a lot closer to my normal cadence. As always, let me know how you like it. But slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. Before we got the preview for Escape the Pizzaplex, all we knew is what the summary of the book said, that it's going to be about Cassie trying to escape the Pizzaplex. And since it mentioned people were working there, the assumption was that this was going to take place before Security Breach, and that it would take place in the Security Breach game's timeline. After all, VIP seems to, the week before it definitely does. Return to the Pit is strange and frightening, but that's at least 2 out of 3 pretty unambiguous in-game timeline books. So at least until the book comes out, I'm going to assume that Escape the Pizzaplex is similarly in the game's timeline. The second is pretty much the first half of the first night. And I say first night because on one of the preview pages, we can see that there are 5 nights checkpointed out to be able to get to. I also wouldn't doubt if there's some secret 6th night that we have to unlock by doing a specific set of events, similar to the week before. So let me do a quick overview of what happens in the preview and what shenanigans you can get up to before we talk about what lore confirmations are hidden within. As we knew, we play as Cassie, who with the friendship of the quote-unquote precocious Gregory, hide in the Pizzaplex until after it closes so they can goof off after hours when all the people have left. Tonight, Gregory says he has a surprise for us, and when we get to Glamrock Freddy, he lets us in on the secret. We're going to play hide and seek, but Glamrock Freddy is going to be it. But as you play through this first half of the night, when you encounter Freddy getting close, he's not acting like his normal jovial self. He's frantic and angry.
GGY, glitch trap.
Almost wild.
GG. Wait a minute. Wait. Camera frizz. Hold on. But wait a minute. Hold on. What's the description of the book again?
We knew we play as Cassie, who with the friendship of the quote-unquote precocious Gregory, hide in the Pizzaplex until after it closes so that
This is exactly what GGY does to his victims. He says, let's hang out at the Pizzaplex.
they can goof off after hours when all the people have left. Tonight, Gregory says he has a surprise for us, and when we get to Glamrock Freddy, he lets us in on the secret. We're going to play hide and seek, but Glamrock Freddy is going to be
Confirms Patient 46.
it. But as you play through this first half of the night, when you encounter Freddy getting close, he's not acting like his normal jovial self. He's frantic and angry. He's often described as almost wild, throwing arcade machines and screaming for where Cassie and Gregory are. angry. There are several routes you can take in this preview, most of them leading to Freddy encountering you with a scary look, but one of them has Freddy find you when you try to hide in the ventilation shaft in the arcade. And in that ending, we get this scene. "I found you," Freddy cried again and again. He lunges, hand closing around your ankle painfully.
Oh, is that where John got that "I found you" from?
You out of the vent, onto the floor of the Superstarcade. "I found you." Freddy looms above you now, scowling, his eyes wild in a way that makes your blood run cold. Something is very, very wrong with him. "You lose." Freddy reaches for you again. You scream. Suddenly, Freddy's chest opens up.
Yeah, that's GGY.
And Gregory bursts out, laughing hysterically. What? You don't understand. Gregory starts to say something, then stops, laughter overtaking him again. Freddy, now looking normal, chuckles with him. They have a bit more of a back and forth, and Gregory explains that this was all a prank on Cassie, and she's upset by it, but she doesn't tell him because she doesn't want to seem like a spoilsport. Then Gregory smirks and says, "Just wait until you find out what I have in mind for tomorrow," which, after scaring the hell out of her, is menacing to say the least.
That's menacing as fuck.
Just speak into the microphone.
So yes, we will talk about that ending, because frankly, that ending is
It's confirmed that he's patient 46.
near confirmation for a theory I've been saying for almost a year and a half. But before we
That
get there,
Gregory-
I should touch on the smaller lore bits along the way. First up is Cassie's dad. We got this sentence on the first page. "Like Gregory, you have a fondness and aptitude for computers and have an intimate understanding of the Pizzaplex and its workings thanks to your father's work as a FAS technician." Now, I hear you, this isn't a huge revelation. Playing Ruin, most people came to the conclusion that Cassie's dad was a FAS technician. After all, when we collect the FAS wrench, she says, "It looks just like my dad's." And the description for the FAS wrench is something used by FAS technicians. We also learned that she was constantly at the daycare, and if you work at a place that has a daycare, they often give you lower rates for your own children. We know that she was able to ride on the Foxy log flume, although it was never open to the public. Something that if you worked there, you could probably sneak your kid onto. We know that her dad knew what happened to Bonnie, but wouldn't tell her. Something that is supposed to be a company secret. So, like I mentioned, it's incredibly heavily implied that Cassie's dad worked at the Pizzaplex in some way, likely a FAS technician because of his FAS wrench. But this book sentence is directly confirming that to be fact, which again, even though it's not a surprise, it's great to have something solid to hold on to. In fact, this is a great moment to point out the delicate nature of what confirmation really means. So let's discuss media literacy for a very brief moment.
I don't think you want to go down this route. Oh, Lord. You do not want to do this. You don't want to do this.
Very technically speaking, confirmation is when something is directly stated to be
I know where he's going to go with this. So,
be fact or directly shown to be true. Now, we can get most of the way there without this, and in most storytelling, you don't really need direct statements for confirmation.
Thank you! Sorry. Thank you.
But FNAF is a special case where the first half of the series is told by an unreliable narrator, and the majority of the modern games are seen through the eyes of people who have optic nerve chips in their brain. But we do have confirmations in FNAF, and Cassie's dad is a great example to showcase the slight difference between something nearly confirmed and then something confirmed. Before this preview came out, it was like 99% on lock guaranteed that Cassie's dad is a FAS technician. We had all the facts in front of us, multiple sources telling it to be true, and some of those sources came before she even got a chip in her brain. But it still wasn't technically confirmed. You could argue your way around most of these claims if he's just a weird collector. If he just loves Fazbear, he could have collected a Faz wrench along with the lunchboxes he already did collect. If he was constantly there, her being at the daycare still makes sense, and knowing that Cassie has a penchant for sneaking in after hours, it's not impossible that she learned that from her dad, who helped sneak her into the log flume and he snuck around and found Bonnie. Like, there are ways to explain it without him being a Faz technician, because it wasn't confirmed. It's way more likely that he was a Faz technician, but we didn't know for certain until now, because this book directly states her dad works as a Faz technician. That being said, I'm not saying if something in FNAF doesn't directly state it to be true, assume it's false. I'm never gonna say that. I just wanted to touch base on the idea of confirmation, because I know myself fall into that trap where I say things are basically confirmed or sometimes slip up and call things confirmed when they're not. So I thought this was a great opportunity for a little mini PSA. Don't talk about how the thumbnail for this video says confirmed in it, even though it goes against everything I just said. Don't worry about it. The correct terminology should be strongly implies or reinforces, rather than confirmed unless directly stated. Moving on to another lore drop we get is about Cassie's birthday. Now, this isn't necessarily a deconfirmation, but it's confusing the facts we thought we knew, and I thought it was warranted to bring up. We know that in Ruin, Roxy mentions that Cassie had a birthday party, and it's a little ambiguous if it was her 11th birthday or just on the 11th, but regardless, Roxy said something to the tune of, "I'm sure your friends will show up to the next one," which implies that Cassie had a birthday party where nobody showed up but Roxy. And we
Oh wow, look at that. We saw that in Ruin.
Cutouts you can find in the AR world, namely these three of Cassie. One where she's doing her makeup, one where she's crying and ruining her makeup, and one where Gregory is coming to comfort her. Now, technically they are two different cardboard cutouts, but I think it is notable that this one where she does her makeup is next to Roxy doing the same motions. So either she studied her and is copying her, or this is one scene where Roxy
she's wearing the same makeup
with Cassie. Regardless, most people saw these cutouts and kind of pieced together a storyline that I myself did as well. This is where Gregory meets Cassie. Essentially, Cassie has a birthday party at the Pizzaplex with Roxy, but none of her friends show up and she has a horrible day. Until a new kid, Gregory, shows up and is there for her birthday, cementing them as best friends. But so far, the book seems to claim a slightly different timeline. They mentioned that birthday party in the preview, and Cassie mentions that it was the worst birthday ever because no one showed up until Roxy showed up and made it way better. In fact, making it the best birthday she's ever had. So if that's the true timeline, then when does this cardboard cutout happen? Because she got
after Escape the Pizzaplex
the makeup after seeing Roxy, but if she had already met Roxy, according to this book, it would have already been the best birthday ever. So there seems to be some conflicting information here. Either this cardboard cutout is showing us a different time and not her birthday party, or this is a slight change to this up until now unrevealed event, or we have conflicting information, because this also comes down to the idea of Gregory's participation. There's a very important distinction we need to figure out, and hopefully we'll learn in this book about the timeline of events here. And that's if Gregory was under the control of Glitchtrap during this event.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
This is not a natural storm.
I don't care.
As we'll get into later, slight spoilers, but I'm sure half of you already know.
Gregory's
it
page at
seems
46.
very likely that Gregory was also a servant under Glitchtrap before the events of Security Breach, like Vanessa is, as Vanny. And if that happens before the events of Security Breach, it could have also happened during this birthday party. And that is very important, because if Gregory wasn't a servant of Glitchtrap during this event, then this is just a very wholesome story of how Gregory and Cassie became best friends. But if Gregory was already a servant to Glitchtrap during this event, then this whole scenario could be much more sinister than
Very
we knew.
dark.
If Gregory was a servant to Glitchtrap, by that point he has access to much of the Pizzaplex's coding and workings, and could very easily change planned dates for invites and parties. If Gregory changed the dates of the party, the location, or anything to mess up the scheduling, and made it so no one would show up to Cassie on her birthday party,
Oh
and
my
she would
God,
not
that
talk to
is
any of those
cruel.
friends, he could have planned for this horrible day to happen to Cassie just so he could manipulate her into trusting him. And I hear you, why would he
Holy shit!
do that? Well, we have two options. Either to turn Cassie into another servant of Glitchtrap, or to make her his next victim. After all, if the story GGY is to be believed, Gregory is up to taking children to the Pizzaplex to disappear them with the animatronics. But there's a couple things that go against this. One, if Gregory was trying to make Cassie disappear, why is she still around? They're playing after hours in the Pizzaplex. Surely he could have done it by now. And two, if he's trying to turn her into a servant of Glitchtrap, why isn't he doing it yet? Maybe he will during this book, who knows? Frankly, I'm leaning towards the idea that the party was done on purpose by Gregory under the influence of Glitchtrap, specifically to earn her trust. And the reason I'm leaning that way is because the book explains that birthday party at the very beginning, which feels like they're setting up for a reveal.
A reveal later,
Here's
yeah.
some information on her birthday party, and maybe we'll uncover the truth by the end of the book. But I'm getting ahead of myself because the latter half of this video is all about Gregory. But before we get there, I do need to shoot down a theory that I've been seeing. A lot of people had alarm bells ringing when reading this preview, understandably so, because the very first sentence of the book is, quote, "You are Cassie, a kind-hearted and adventurous young patron of Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, and human best friend of Gregory." The specification that Cassie is Gregory's human best friend was weird to say the least, and something that is worth pointing out. But some people took that to mean this might be evidence
Gregory's
for
a bot.
bot scenario, that Cassie is being pointed out early as being human to either set up a potential future twist that she isn't human, or set up a foreshadowing that Cassie is the human while Gregory is secretly an animatronic. And I hate to break hearts here, but I don't think that's what this is saying. Because, like, look, let's be super real. Like, look.
Gregory's friends are the animatronics. Ah, I get it now.
Guys, what do you think is more likely? The fact that Cassie is called Gregory's human best friend to set up a potential twist where one of them isn't human, or Gregory, who is shown to be very close with Glamrock Freddy, claims Glamrock Freddy as his best friend. So that way, Cassie is his best human friend. Kind of like how kids in elementary school would be like, oh, that's my best boyfriend, that's my best girlfriend, and stuff like that. Cassie is Gregory's best human friend because she isn't his number one. His number one is Glamrock Freddy. So on a technicality, Cassie gets to be his best friend because she's his best human friend. I think it's at least way more likely than a reveal that it's a robot. But hey, I've done this Stan is Wrong song before, and if this is setting up that we're gonna get a Gregbot reveal in this book, I'll do it again. But alright, I kicked the can down the road long enough. Let's talk about Gregory. Like I mentioned before, there's a Tales from the Pizzaplex story called GGY that I've talked about extensively on this channel. The very brief of it is that a kid is investigating the Pizzaplex to try to find out why all the high scores of the arcade machine are earned by a GGY. High scores that are seemingly impossible. But in his investigation, he learns that this GGY is likely entering after hours with a modified pass, that he has modified the coding of the animatronics themselves, and that the guidance counselors that have been disappearing were all brought to the Pizzaplex after hours with the GGY pass right before they disappeared. But by the end of this story, one of the friends for this group project, who at the time is going by Rab, short for Dr. Rabbit, sabotages the whole project and gets them to fail. This upsets the main character, but Dr. Rabbit, whose name is then revealed to be Greg, promises to bring the main character to the Pizzaplex to cheer him up and meet his friends. The reveal being that Greg is GGY. So Greg, GGY.
Now it's confirmed. Yeah. Now I get it. Greg, GGY, and now that we know that Gregory also does the same things as Greg and GGY, they must be,
Gregory That's not a big leap to make. When this story came out, most of us immediately assumed that this was a story about how Gregory was working for Glitchtrap at this point in the timeline, which feels pretty solid. And I'm not going to say that I'm the only one who thought of that. Most of us read this and went, oh, Gregory was working for Glitchtrap. He's probably Patient 46.
He is Patient 46.
And for whatever reason, by the beginning of Security Breach, he isn't under the control of Glitchtrap anymore. But this book teaser not only supports that theory, but it also supports a very specific timeline of events that I purported in my Gregory timeline like a month ago. The idea that when Glitchtrap was removed from Gregory's and Glamrock Freddy's consciousness, it also wiped their memories. And I'm so confident in that theory, specifically because of the prank Gregory pulls on Cassie in this first night, and how close Gregory and Freddy are. Gregory was piloting Freddy in his chest cavity for this prank. Once Cassie starts to scream, the chest cavity opens and Gregory was hiding inside. So if that's the case, why is it then that during the intro to Security Breach, Gregory is scared to enter Freddy's chest cavity, saying he doesn't want to turn into a meat pretzel? This is something he's done before, several times in fact, if he's willing to do it for a prank. Not only that, but they are incredibly close during this time. Like I said, Gregory sees Glamrock Freddy as his best friend. But at the beginning of Security Breach, they barely know each other. Freddy doesn't even recognize Gregory's face. How does this make sense? Well, if when Glitchtrap's control of Gregory and Freddy was released, it wiped their memories, suddenly they're starting from square one, and Gregory has to relearn that the chest cavity is mostly safe. Freddy and Gregory have to re-meet each other and become best friends again. It gives so much weight to this version of the theory that I truly believe in at this point, but there is still one question that the preview doesn't touch on, obviously. If that's true, why does Glitchtrap's control of Gregory end? Most of us have a pretty strong assumption
That's
about
a good
Glitchtrap's
question.
control of Freddy. The crash that happens on the stage, right? When he crashes, he reboots in safe mode, and most of us take that to assume that the safe mode flushed Glitchtrap out of his system. But the question still remains, why did he crash in the first place? My version of events is that if when Gregory was Dr. Rabbit, he modified the animatronics, he may have modified them to protect himself, as Freddy watches the kid investigating GGY like a hawk while he's there. And if that's true, his core programming would have been modified to protect Gregory. And if he broke free, he would have received a directive to find Gregory, and when that directive clashed with his core programming, it causes the crash we see on stage. But then what about Gregory? Why did he suddenly break free and need to be captured? Well, I think it's incredibly likely that just as Vanessa's consciousness is locked behind Princess Quest cabinets, Gregory's consciousness is locked behind Balloon World cabinets.
And Cassie beat
there's
it.
two that we know of. One Balloon World is in the daycare loft, and the other one is in the FNAF 6 basement. The interesting
Cassie
thing,
beat
if
it.
Cassie's dad truly is the player of Help Wanted 2, he
Oh, do you think he's the arcade conspiracist?
would have been nearby one of those Balloon World
Conspirator?
arcade machines. But if Cassie, someone who frequented the daycare and was known to sneak around in places she's not supposed to be in after hours, she would have been by the other one in the daycare loft. And I've been saying that I think Cassie's dad beats the second one, and that's where Security Breach starts. But I have a feeling that the true ending of Escape the Pizzaplex will have Cassie finding the Balloon World arcade machine in the daycare loft
And playing
even
it.
freeing Gregory from the control of Glitchtrap,
Which is set up security. Wow.
as they're performing, thus beginning Security Breach. Then she's got to get out of there and look for Gregory later. I truly think, like the week before, Escape the Pizzaplex
Is a direct prequel to Security Breach.
the immediate prequel to Security Breach, leading directly to its inciting incident. But we'll have to wait and see for when the full book comes out. Like
Fire. All right. Well, I mean, with that, I mean, yeah, we've pretty much. Oh. I mean, yeah, with that, I mean, it's pretty much what? Been live for a few hours now. I mean, we watched all the videos, so I think with that, I'm gonna end the stream pretty late. So yeah, anyone that viewed the TikTok stream or this stream, of course, have a thank you so much, all of that. Thank you for all the donations, etc., all of that.